Good afternoon and welcome to the January 15th, 2022 meeting of the Roseville Independent Redistricting Commission. The meeting is now called to order. Clerk, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Borowiak? Here. Bertson? Here. Frank?
Here.
Griffith? Here. McPhail? Here. O'Keefe?
Here.
Sweeney? Here. Waldrop?
Here.
Willoughby?
Here.
Wagoner?
Here.
Absent is Ledwig. Commissioner alternates, Keene?
Here.
Slaughter?
Here.
And alternate donor is absent.
All right, thank you very much. Alternate Commissioner Slaughter, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So again, welcome everybody. This is our meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission out in the remote regions, although we find ourselves back here in the chambers. We still have a meeting at Martha Riley on Tuesday, Martha Riley Library on Tuesday, and then at St. John's Episcopal Church on Thursday, wrapped up by our January 24th meeting back here at the chambers. I'll open it up to public comment. If anybody has anything to say about an item that's not on the agenda, you're welcome to at this time. Seeing none.
Phone calls?
A vote today for telephone calls? Do we have
Yes,
to?
you do. You still have an active AB 361 resolution on file.
So we can't take calls?
You can take calls today, yes.
Still can take calls today. Do we have any calls? All right, no calls. So we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll start off with reports and presentations, item 5.1.
So good afternoon, commissioners. As you know, I am not Joe Mandel. I am his boss. My name is Michelle Scheidenberger. I'm the city attorney. Joe had a possible exposure to COVID, so he got sent to his room for a few days. However, he's feeling just fine, so he's going to appear remotely. There he is. There you go, Joe. And he's going to be doing the presentation, but I'm here to assist him as needed. Joe, you want to take it over?
Yes, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Michelle. And yes, everybody, we do definitely have a special guest VIP tonight to help us out with some of the discussion that we were having the other night at Shellito Pool. So I will get to that. But the first item that we're going to address is item 5.1, which is the consideration of a resolution to allow and reauthorize remote telephonic participation in the meetings. So our existing initial resolution, which allows remote telephonic public comment, that is going to naturally expire on January 19th. And so I wanted to make sure that we got this on the agenda for approval or consideration, at least moving forward. I'm not going to go into as much background detail about the law like I have on our prior two initial resolution passages, but I am going to go through some of the background here. And so again, the Commission is considering a resolution to reauthorize remote telephonic participation. The resolution is in your packet and is part of the presentation tonight. So essentially what we're looking at is this relates to the Brown Act and how the Brown Act was amended by AB 361. And so we need to make some findings if we want to allow remote participation in our meetings. So AB 361 applies to meetings that are during a state of emergency, and so there must either be imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing by state and local officials, or a finding by the legislative body that meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees as a result of the emergency. This is the same sort of analysis that we've been doing at our prior meetings, but just to update this, to the best of staff's knowledge, there's no social distancing measures currently imposed or recommended by state or local officials. And so therefore, the Redistricting Commission needs to make findings that meetings solely in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of the public as a result of the emergency. And one item to note for the Commission's consideration is that due to a recent increase in COVID cases, the CDPH has mandated that everyone in California wear a mask in indoor public spaces. At our last meeting, that order was scheduled to be in effect from December 15th, 2021 to January 15th, 2022, and it's been extended another 30 days. So we are indoor mask mandate in effect through February 15th of 2022. So the resolution being considered by the Commission tonight is similar to the resolutions that we passed at our October 25th and December 20th meetings, but those were technically considered initial resolutions under AB 361, and so that initial resolution is going to expire on January 19th. So if we want to continue allowing remote telephonic participation beyond that initial 30-day period, then we would need to reconfirm the circumstances of the state of emergency by renewing our resolution. And so in order to renew the resolution, the Commission needs to reconsider the circumstances of the state of emergency and determine that the state of emergency remains active and continues to have ongoing and direct impacts on the ability to meet safely in person. So if passed, this renewal resolution would reauthorize the use of remote telephonic participation for a maximum of 30 days from the period of January 20th to February 19th. So going to the actual resolution itself, you'll see that for consideration by the Commission, this is a resolution of the Independent Redistricting Commission of the City of Roseville to reauthorize remote telephonic participation in meetings pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361. And this is for the period of January 20th, 2022 to February 19th, 2022. And if you're looking at the reso, really what we're looking at, the substance here is after all of the whereases that we have on the first page, when you're looking at the second page, there is section 2 that I will read out for everyone. Now therefore be it resolved by the Independent Redistricting Commission of the City of Roseville that the Independent Redistricting Commission has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and has determined that the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability to meet safely in person and therefore shall conduct their meetings with remote telephonic participation as an option in the manner that's prescribed in the government code. So that's what's before the Commission tonight is, again, reconsideration of this resolution. This is slightly different. This is a renewal resolution rather than the initial resolution, but not much has changed otherwise. So I'm going to kick this back to Chair Frank for questions and any comments from the public before we entertain a motion.
Thank you, Joe. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments for Joe regarding this resolution?
Just to the extent that his appearance in a little window on a screen is probably a good evidence that it's still required.
Could everybody hear that? She said that given that he's in a little window on the screen, there's evidence that we may want to continue the resolution. Any other comments? Okay. We'll go ahead and open it up to members of the public who are present in the chambers who'd like to offer public comment on this resolution. Seeing none, we open it up for phone calls as well? Yes. Are there any phone calls? No. There are no phone calls. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. And if a member of the commission would like to make a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to reauthorize remote telephonic participation in meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. Would you like to speak on your motion?
Oh, I think Joe's presence remotely says it all.
Okay, is there anybody who'd like to speak against the motion? Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
The motion is to adopt the resolution reauthorizing remote telephonic participation in meetings pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361 for the period of January 20th, 2022 to February 19th, 2022. Commissioner Borowiak?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooperson?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffith? Commissioner McPhail?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldrop,
Yes.
Commissioner Willoughby.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. So we'll now move on to item 5.2, an overview of the draft maps. I believe, Joe, you're up again.
I'm up again, and I didn't want to influence your decision on the last item, but I wish I was there with you, but I am thankfully not near you. So hopefully I will be able to join you guys again on Tuesday. I'm going to have, I think Stephanie's going to run the PowerPoint for me as I am talking through it. Excellent. Perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Joe Mandel with the Roseville City Attorney's Office. And today, the Independent Redistricting Commission is holding the 4th of 6 public hearings to discuss the 6 draft maps that are being considered for final adoption by the Commission. And as an FYI for everyone, I've been giving this same presentation at each of the other 3 public hearings that we've had, just to make sure that the messaging is consistent. And so before we jump into the maps, I'm going to go over some of the background about redistricting law and criteria that needs to be considered when we are drawing a final map. And so some of this information I know is redundant, but some people may be hearing it for the first time. So if we can move on to the next slide to talk about the purpose is sort of why we're here today and the purpose of the commission. And so this comes from our Roseville City Charter, which was added by the voters by passing Measure R in November of 2020. And this was to establish a independent redistricting commission, to establish a redistricting process that's open and transparent and allows public comment on the drawing of city council district boundaries. It ensures that district boundaries are drawn according to the redistricting criteria set forth in the city charter and applicable state and federal laws, and ensures that the redistricting process is conducted with integrity, fairness, and without personal or political considerations. And next slide, please. The Roseville City Charter sets forth all of the redistricting criteria that the commission must follow, and this is found in Article 11, Section 11.09. These are the items that the commission shall consider when drawing its final map, and these are all straight out of the city charter that's available on our website if you want to follow along. This is just Section A1. Item number 1, council districts should be drawn substantially equal in population as required by the Constitution, and we determine that population equality by using the latest decennial census data. Item number 2 is that council district boundaries need to comply with the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, and various federal, state, and other laws applicable to charter cities. Next slide, please. Now that we've talked about what shall we look at, we're sort of looking at the other items to look at when looking at criteria and adopting in this order, looking at the criteria in this order of priority. And this is where we get that to the extent practicable qualifier language. So looking in this order of priority, number 1, to the extent practicable, council districts shall be geographically contiguous. Item number 2, to the extent practicable, the geographic integrity of any local neighborhood association boundaries, or local community of interest should be respected in a manner that minimizes its division. And here we have a definition of a community of interest, which is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. And it's important to note that communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. And we'll talk more about communities of interest in our next item as well. But moving on into the other items of priority, we talked about numbers 1 and 2. Now 3, 4, and 5. Number 3, council district boundaries should be easily identifiable and understandable by residents. And so to the extent practicable, council districts shall be bounded by natural and artificial barriers, by streets or other boundaries of the city. Item number 4 in order of priority. Where it doesn't conflict with the preceding criteria, council districts shall be drawn to encourage geographical compactness in a manner that nearby areas of population are not bypassed in favor of more distant population. And then item number 5 is any other commission adopted criteria that does not conflict with other criteria and requirements in this section or state and federal law. And to date, there has been no other commission adopted criteria by the IRC. Next slide. After now looking at items in order of priority, these are the items that the commission shall not consider when adopting a final map. So important, the commission shall not adopt council district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against any political party. And also the commission shall not consider a place of residence of any individual, including any incumbent or political candidate in the creation of maps. Now I'm going to go over briefly the 6 draft maps that have been moved on for further consideration. We received 23 public map submittals, and at our December 20th meeting, the commission narrowed it down to 6 maps for further consideration. And so those were renumbered as draft maps A, B, C, D, E, and F, and we'll go through each one of those now with a quick overview. This is draft map A. And this is formerly public map number 1. This map has a total deviation of 9.5% and preserves 89% of the neighborhoods. Next slide. This is draft map B, and draft map B is formerly public map number 6. This map has a total deviation of 6.3% and preserves 91% of the neighborhoods. Next map, please. This is map C, draft map C. This is formerly public map number 8. This map has a total deviation of 4.4% and preserves 78% of the neighborhoods. Next slide. This is draft map D. This is formerly public map number 14. This map has a total deviation of 6.3% and preserves 93% of neighborhoods. Next slide. This is draft map E. This is formerly public map number 15, and this map has a total deviation of 8.3% and preserves 98% of neighborhoods. And then finally, this is draft map F, which is formerly public map number 25. This map has a total deviation of 6.0% and preserves 98% of neighborhoods. Next slide, please. I'm going to move on now and talk about the procedure for adoption of the map and the final report. And we had quite a bit of discussion about this at our last meeting, and so I wanted to go through this with a little bit of extra detail today. This is language that comes out of our city charter in Article 11, Section 11.10. And you'll see in Section A, it says, the commission shall file a preliminary redistricting plan and draft map with the city clerk, along with a written statement of findings and reason for adoption, which shall include the criteria employed in the process and a full analysis and explanation of decisions made by the commission. The city clerk shall publish the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map at least 30 calendar days prior to the adoption of a final redistricting report and final map. Now, that draft redistricting plan and draft map were filed with the clerk on December 22nd, 2021, and we are currently in the 30-day public review period where we're holding all of these public hearings. Now, again, this was an item that we had quite a bit of discussion about at our last meeting because there was a lot of discussion about what is technically considered a draft map, and the final sentence that we're looking at on the screen here about how the city clerk shall publish the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map at least 30 calendar days prior to the adoption of a final redistricting report and final map. We had a lot of discussion about changing of boundaries and live line drawing at our January 24th potential final adoption meeting date. And so, as I mentioned to the group on Thursday night at our meeting, an issue has sort of arisen and has been analyzed by our office, by the city attorney's office, about an interpretation of what this means to publish a draft map and whether if the maps that we've published are considered the draft maps, or if we have any changes to the maps at all, if those maps would be further considered to be draft maps and subject to a further 30-day publication period. So I do want to have a further discussion about that in a moment, but I did want to continue on with my presentation just to go on through the next items before we have more of a discussion about that for the draft map. So next slide, please, if I can. So this is talking about the 30 calendar day period after publication, where the commission shall hold at least 5 public hearings, including 1 public hearing in each existing council district. We are doing meeting number 4 at the Civic Center today, and then you can see that our upcoming schedule on Tuesday, we have a meeting at the Martha Riley Library at 6 p.m. And then on Thursday, January 20th, we have a meeting at St. John's Episcopal Church at 6 p.m. Next slide, please. So this would be the procedure for moving on after we've had all of our public hearings. So after having heard comments from the public on the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map, the commission shall adopt a final redistricting report and final map, and that commission adopted final redistricting report and final map has the force and effect of law and is effective 30 calendar days after it's filed with the city clerk and shall remain effective essentially for the next 10 years. And important to note is that the city council may not rescind, supersede, or revise the district boundaries that were adopted by the commission. So we have had scheduled a final map adoption date of January 24th, 2022, which is what we are doing right now, moving toward all of that. And so at this point, I'm going to move on to the next slide and talk about just moving forward for the rest of this process. So after the final map is adopted, the city clerk shall number each council district such that for as many residents as possible, the number of council district they reside in remains the same. And also noting that the final redistricting report and final map shall be subject to referendum in the same manner as ordinances. So I just want to get that out there for the record. But Stephanie, if we can go back 2 slides, if possible. One more, I'm sorry. So we're going to focus now and on the last sentence on this page, again, about talking about how the city clerk shall publish the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map at least 30 calendar days prior to the adoption of a final report and map. As we talked about on Thursday, you know, there was a little bit of further discussion about what is considered a draft map and does a draft map can that draft map be changed, or does that turn into yet another draft map subject to another publishing period? So I wanted to update the commission on what we have done since we met on Thursday night. So after we met on Thursday, I have been working with Michelle Scheidenberger, our city attorney, as well as outside elections counsel that specializes in this sort of thing. And so I wanted to just have a further discussion and note that the reason why Michelle is here, one, because I'm here and not at the meeting, but also Michelle was involved in drafting the charter language and also staffed the Charter Review Commission where this language was kicked around and drafted. And so she can provide a little bit of background and history and analysis of why the language is what it is, and also, you know, some of our options for moving forward. And so, Michelle, I can kick it over to you now, or I can continue on with talking about some of our options moving forward. Up to you.
Why don't you just run through feedback. Can you run just through the options, Joe, real quick?
Yes.
Then, okay.
Yes. So what we have, as I mentioned, Michelle and I, we got together yesterday, did quite a bit of research and looked into this and talked this over with our outside counsel. And we've sort of come up with 3 potential options for the commission to consider moving forward about how the procedure will work to adopt a final map. And so all 3 of these options are options that the city attorney's office would support. And so I wanted to really let you know that we're providing the support in the sense of I am here to give you the analysis, as well as we have our city attorney here to provide you any sort of analysis to help you with your decision moving forward. But the 3 options that we sort of have with regard to this, how do we interpret the draft map and publishing a draft map? We have a couple of options. And I'm going to say option number 1 is on January 24th, we move forward and adopt one of the draft maps A through F with 0 changes and no live line drawing. It sounded from the commission at the Thursday night meeting that that was not really something that was favored, but I just wanted to put that out there as obviously an option that would be, procedurally okay. The second option is an option that I'd like to have a good amount of discussion on, and that option is that we move forward on January 24th with having a live line drawing meeting with JED where we all sit there and talk as long as we need to get to a map that the commission is comfortable with. And at that point, we talked about publishing and how under our charter we have to publish for 30 days, but under state law requires only publishing for 7 days and before you adopt your final map. So there is a possibility for us to essentially create a final map on Monday, January 24th, and then be able to publish that map online with the clerk's office for a period of 7 days. And this would be in accordance with California elections law. And after that 7-day period, we would be able to come back and have a meeting on January 31st, where we would be able to adopt a final map. And, essentially we're a week behind with an extra meeting. And so I wanted to keep that open as option number 2. Option number 3 is that we finalize the map on January 24th, or if we needed to, moving forward to January 31st, if we really needed to. But we essentially get to a point where we have a finalized map on January 24th, and then out of absolute safety, we publish it for another 30 days and then come back sometime in late February. And that's when we would adopt the final map. And it's again up to sort of discussion about whether or not we would have to have those 5 public hearings. I think the analysis that our city attorney's office has been able to do is that I think we have met the requirements for the public meeting criteria, and that it would not necessarily have to go out for an additional 5 public hearings. But if the commission was interested in still holding each one of those 5 public hearings, we can have a discussion about that. But those are sort of our options that I wanted to talk about moving forward before we get into too much detail. And again, we have our city attorney, Michelle Scheidenberger, here, who can provide great, excellent detail and analysis on, sort of what we were considering when we were drafting this charter language. And again, I want to let everyone know that at the end of this entire process, we're going to have a debrief. And one of the things is obviously going to be what are some suggested changes we could make for our charter next time that is amended to help clarify some of these things, because this is our charter. It's written the way that it is. It was adopted by voters. And so we are sort of stuck with interpreting what the language is and, looking at analogous things in state law. And so at that point, I'm going to kick it over to Michelle to provide any other information, unless you want me to continue on any of that.
No, I think that's good, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Joe and I reached out to our outside elections counsel because even though this is our charter provision and the ultimate interpretation of a charter rests with the city attorney's office, we wanted to get his input on analogous state law and how general law cities and charter cities who do not have a Section 11, Article 11 in their charter, how they normally handle it. So first of all, we talked about the language that Joe talked about, and our outside counsel's opinion is that the charter does distinguish between a draft map and a final map and contemplates that they could be different. And you could see that when you read the language, after having heard comments from the public on the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map, the commission shall adopt a final redistricting report and final map, which implies that it could be different. And the whole purpose of the public outreach period that you're going through for the 30 days is to take public input and potentially tweak that map. So based on that, outside counsel and the city attorney's office agrees that on the 24th, you could tweak that map and then adopt that map that same night. So that is one option. Now, I asked outside counsel, I said, what do other cities do? And so state law that Joe referenced, in which case I'm going to read, it's election code 21628 election code. This applies to charter cities that do not have an independent redistricting commission and council themselves are adopting a map. But it says A draft map shall be published on the internet for at least 7 days before being adopted as a final map by the council. So you see in state law that it does require that the draft map be adopted as the final map, which is distinguishable from our charter language. But in any event, I asked outside counsel, what do other cities do, And he says it does happen that at the night that they're supposed to adopt the final map, they want to make some changes. But because state law only requires a 7-day publication period, it's not a big deal and not a big to wait another 7 days. So they always publish that kind of proposed final map, and they wait 7 days and they come back and they then adopt it at that time. So that is an option. I think so we have all options are available to you. You could adopt one of the maps that you have now without changes on the 24th, tweak the lines on the 24th and adopt that map, tweak the lines on the 24th, republish for 7 days, come back on the 31st and adopt that map. Republish for another 30 days and hold public hearings, another 5 public hearings. Republish for another 30 days without the public hearings. Staff's recommendation is to do the 7-day publication period. And I'm going to give you five reasons why we support that. First of all, I think it's for transparency purposes, right? So on the 24th, when you've done this outreach, you got 6 maps, community's been giving you input, and then on that night, if you tweak the lines and adopt that map at that same time, there hasn't been time for the public really to digest that, right? Because that's a newly created map at that point. So the 7-day period then makes sense for transparency purposes. Also, it's analogous to similar state law. This is not a made-up time frame. I didn't just take the 7 days out of my hat. I'm looking at analogous state law to see what they would require. So that kind of makes sense to do that. And if the charter is unclear, I think it's a reasonable interpretation to look at that as kind of an analogous situation. It meets the February 1st campaign fundraising deadline. Now, I understand that that's really not your concern. However, it would really be nice to meet that deadline, and so we can reduce any complaints from candidates about eating into their campaign fundraising period. Frankly, if we had another 5 hearings next month, my city manager wanted me to convey to you that we just don't have enough staffing and resources and scheduling availability to handle 5 more public hearings. You can see we're dropping like flies. We're like third stringers are up here, and but we're Roseville. So if you want us to do it, we will make it happen. But it would really, really be great not to have to do another 5 public hearings. And also, I really like this idea because it gives staff more time to prepare the final redistricting report. So if you notice our charter, when you look at our charter, it says that at that meeting where you adopt the final map, you adopt the final redistricting report as well. But I just don't know how you're going to do that, how we can write that report for you on the 21st or the 24th if we don't know which map you're going to adopt and what's going to happen at the 24th, because what happens at the 24th is going to be part of the report, right? You had the 6 maps, you did the 6 public hearings. At the 24th, you tweaked or you didn't tweak. So that would give us time to prepare the report. It gives the clerk's office time to prepare all the minutes, which are going to be adopted at your last meeting. And then it gives time, I think, for the commission to really debrief. Because I have no doubt that the 24th is going to be a long and exhausting meeting for you. So if you adopt the map on that same night, and then the staff's going to ask you for your feedback and debrief, you're probably going to be tired and cranky and, can't really focus on that. If you go ahead and tweak any lines on the 24th, we publish it for a 7-day period. You come back on the 31st. The adoption of the map at that point is going to be very quick. You'll adopt the map, you'll adopt your redistricting report, you're going to adopt the minutes, and then you'll have a chance to fully debrief. What went wrong, what did you like, what didn't you like, what changes do you suggest that we make to the charter in 8 more years? So for these reasons, I really do like the 7-day publication period option, but all options are available to you, and Joe and I are available to answer any question. And like he said, we are comfortable from a legal perspective on all options.
All right, thank you, Joe and Michelle. Do any commissioners have any questions regarding this presentation or comments?
I'll comment real quick. I think this might be an easy decision for us. Just kind of looking around and seeing facial expressions and head nods and stuff like that. I think for one, it's great that the city went out to get basically a third-party opinion, so it's not just all inside baseball. So I support staff's recommendation.
Any other comments or questions?
Would we need to vote on one of these in order to enable it, or do we get to the 24th and then just draw straws?
Yeah, so there's no voting necessary, but you can get a consensus if that's what to do. And, you're not going to foreclose the fact that on the 24th, you may end up adopting one of the 6 maps unchanged, right? As the demographer goes through and moves lines, sometimes there's a domino effect. Maybe it gets things out of the balance of the population deviation, or fails the compactness test or whatever. So you don't have to you don't have to make that decision tonight. I mean, you can come to a consensus. I think it's fine, but you don't have to make an official motion on it. Then when it comes on the 24th, we'll see how that plays out at that meeting. And if you end up deciding to tweak, and then you're going to direct staff to publish the proposed final map on the internet for a 7-day period and come back on the 31st with the final report.
But it would be helpful if we maybe did do a consensus and at least have an idea what we're all thinking collectively, what we'd like to do and how we'd like to proceed on the 24th.
Of course, and that's going to be helpful for staff too, because if
Right.
we have to gear up for another 5 meetings, and And I have other work Joe needs to be doing. A lot of other work.
I have a question. This all kind of came out of the possible threat of a challenge to any map that we do.
Well, we haven't had a possible threat. Okay.
Right, but the idea is we wanted to make sure we crossed all our Ts and dotted all our Is in case there was ever a threat. And in the language of the charter, it says that it can be done by referendum, that it can be challenged. How does that look? I mean, what does a referendum to challenge our map look like?
Yeah, that would require a petition process, and you have to get so many signatures, which I don't recall off the top of my head, and then be able to then present that to be able to challenge the map.
And then
I don't remember the exact number of signatures, but I did look it up, and I'm going to say it's in the 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 signature range before you can then, turn it into the city clerk's office to get on the ballot.
And then that would be something that would be at the November election
That is correct.
at the same time that but there's not a judge who would come in
It will eventually, yes.
after a referendum,
Potentially they could.
but not prior.
Not prior. You would put it on the ballot, and then the voters then could repeal it. Now, here's the thing. The discussion we had with outside counsel about this was we talked about the possibility of challenges of what they would look like and that kind of thing, because that's what we do as lawyers. But unlike the CVRA, and when council switched from at-large elections to district elections, in that world, it is possible that a plaintiff can impose a map on the city, and a judge can impose a map on the city. This is not that world. So if someone were to challenge a map, they cannot impose their map on us, right? So what they could do is say, you violated your charter. Procedurally, you didn't follow your charter. Well, okay, then the remedy will be, do it right, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, I think the concern about a referendum is it does take us to November, and then what do we do in the meantime? How do people campaign? How do they fundraise? So I think it's important that we have looked at all this and we come up with an interpretation. I'll be honest with you, when I drafted Article 11 of the charter, it didn't contemplate to me that we would be doing live drawings on the night you're supposed to be adopting your final map. You can see under state law, the draft map is the final map, right? So obviously that's something that maybe we need to correct in the next update to the charter, to clarify this kind of situation.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? We'll go ahead and open it up to members of the public who'd like to offer public comment on item 5.2. State your name for the record, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jay Reed. I live over in Johnson Ranch. A couple questions, if I could. When you have the map that's adopted on January 24th for 7 days, what happens? So it's online. It's online for 7 days. Mm-hmm. And? Public comments on it?
Yes, they could certainly take public comments on that draft, on that proposed final map.
Okay, but so like the map's there for 7 days, you receive public comments, it comes back on January 31st with public comments, and then what? They have to adopt it?
No, just keep in mind, you don't have to adopt any map at any time before June 10th. June 10th is your absolute deadline. So you can come back, and if the commission doesn't like the map still, then we can repeat, right? You know, this kind of thing. But they're not forced to adopt the map on the 31st.
Okay, so you're just extending public comment, basically, on a map that they have proposed as a draft.
That's correct.
And they can continue to do that until June 10th.
Right. June 10th is your legally required deadline to adopt a map.
Okay. How many days do you have to collect signatures on a referendum? 30?
I believe so.
Yeah, so
Joe,
you
did
need to
look
collect
that up?
8,000 signatures in 30 days? I wouldn't worry about that, you guys. Thanks.
Any other members of the public who'd like to offer public comment? State your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Ellen DeBach Riley. I am a resident of Roseville in the historic Sierra Vista neighborhood. I want to thank you first for having this Saturday meeting. I know that wasn't originally scheduled, but it was the only one that fit my schedule, so I do appreciate it. I want to speak in favor of map D, E, or F, specifically because I have two primary interests. One is that the neighborhood associations be kept intact. Am I speaking in the wrong time frame?
It's an overview of draft maps.
No, this is actually, that's the next section. The next section
We're still on
is-
5.1,
Yeah,
sorry.
we're still on.
Out of place? Shall I sit down and come back?
Yeah, so we're on
I'm sorry,
5.2, which is
5.2.
kind of going through the schedule and going through the
Okay.
5.3,
My
the next part.
apologies.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about draft maps.
It is draft map.
This is where we've always had
Yeah,
public comment on
we-
this. In the right spot.
I think, like, I'd like to have her continue.
Okay.
We have
5.3 is
testimony
community
during
of
this
interest,
item.
public testimony, and then on the map, but that's fine. That's fine. You can continue.
On the presentation of the maps that Joe just gave, or is there any public comment on the maps?
No,
And I have taken lots of public testimony during this item in this same way. So yes, please, if we could continue to
Yeah,
hear the.
I don't know who interrupted about that.
I thought we were on procedure.
Yeah.
Discussion about.
We got procedure covered, thanks. Come on up, Ellen.
Thank you again, my apologies. So, my reasoning for wanting to advocate for maps D, E, or F, all three of them keep the neighborhood associations together as intact as possible. And the other interest that I have is the historic neighborhoods need to be kept together. Our interests are so different than the other parts of the city where there's new development that we need to have a voice. The current districts put historic Sierra Vista in with the whole east side of the city, which really didn't make any sense to us at the time, but it took our 400 little houses and made our voice unheard in comparison to all the voices on the east side. So talking about, modifying map B because voters won't be heard, I understand that. So as map B is right now, I would urge you not to consider it specifically because of where our neighborhood lands. It separates us from other historic districts, or other historic neighborhoods. But I do value that every voter has a voice, and that's the reason I'm asking you to look at the last three maps. Thank you.
Ellen, could I ask a question? Or if
Yeah.
anyone else has? So I know you had called in before about Sierra Vista, and we've had conversations about adjusting map B to include Sierra Vista.
District 2.
In District 2, sorry, along with the rest of.
Move it down.
Right. Now, some of the issues with that are that the census blocks that run along Alta Vista Avenue, there's one census block that has the north part of the street, along with a lot of folks up in Diamond Oaks, and then the southern part of Alta Vista is with historic Sierra Vista. The other question is, there's another census block with the cemetery and the high school in it where nobody lives.
Right.
But that's still a historic part of the neighborhood association. But the houses above them don't necessarily fit in with Sierra Vista. They fit in a little bit more, in my opinion anyway. You live in that area, you drive that neighborhood. Do you see some differences between kind of north of the high school and cemetery and Alta Vista down?
Yeah, I do agree with you. Both sides of Alta Vista need to be included in the historic Sierra Vista neighborhood. But the ones that are on the other side of the high school probably are more remote. They're not really, they don't participate much in our issues. My bigger concern is that just as a historic neighborhood, we don't have, for instance, a lighting and landscape district. So we don't have a pot of money to help improve our parks or to fix our sidewalks. The newer developments do. And so when our voice is so small in the bigger issues, then our concerns aren't heard. So if we're combined with other neighborhoods that have the same kind of issues, I'm not so concerned about, the pieces, the details. I think those 3 maps include all of the houses above us, including Diamond Oaks. But, D, E, and F. But, and I could be mistaken, but I'm more concerned about not being connected with the neighborhoods below us. We need to be connected to Los Cerritos, Roseville Heights, Folsom Road, Cherry Glen, Cherry something. Yeah. Anyway, that's really what I wanted to emphasize.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak on item 5.2?
Is that the same topic that I don't have the agenda in front of me? Is that?
Yeah, that's overview of the draft maps.
Oh, yes. Hi, my name's April Mariscal, and I've been a resident of Roseville since 2007. And since moving here, I've dedicated my life to volunteering in this community. I currently am president of the Lions Club. I am vice president of Performing Arts of Roseville. I'm on the board for Roseville Coalition of Neighborhood Associations, Crime Stoppers for Roseville PD. The list goes on and on. I'm also president of the Blue Oaks Neighborhood Association. I am not a fan of this redistricting process at all, and so I thank you for what you're doing, because this is probably one place I would not volunteer to be on, is this committee, so thank you. However, I cannot speak on behalf of my entire neighborhood, but I can speak on the ones that have reached out to me to comment, and they're actually in favor of map B with some minor changes, and they've asked that with any change to any map that they are presented back to the public and allowed additional 30 days to comment on. And I'm not sure if that's what the policy is or not, but that's what I've been asked to say from the residents. So again, I feel like our council members represent all of us as a whole. I love the city as a whole, and I hate the division of these districts. I really do. And I feel like I should have that right to vote for any council member that's representing me, which is all of them. So if I had to choose a map that's going to be the least disruptive, I would have to go with map B. And yeah, map B would be my choice. That would be the most, I guess no matter what decision you guys make, people are going to be mad. But it's just a matter of what map is going to make the least amount of people angry. So, and I think B is the one that's least disruptive. Thank you.
Are there any questions for April? Can I ask you a quick question? I don't know if you came in a little bit later. So you had mentioned if we do make revisions, 30 days for the public to see it, but one of the other options is 7 days, which is allowable under state law. But are you saying 30 days or just any kind of period?
I think that's what they were requesting was 30 days to
From your neighborhood association?
Just to review any changes made to any maps and then be able to comment on it.
And we also encourage you or any members of your neighborhood association, if they have some tweaks here and there, to submit them to the city clerk. That'll be part of public record, and then we'll see those as well.
Great, thank you.
State your name for the record, please.
Yep. My name is Derek Pell. I'm a Roseville resident. I live over in Folsom Road. I'm here to advocate on behalf of maps D, E, or F. Kind of like Ellen was saying, I actually rented over in Sierra Vista for a little bit, historic Sierra Vista. And I think there's a lot of connection with that neighborhood, with the surrounding kind of downtown core, Folsom Road, Cherry Glen, as Los Cerritos, as she was previously saying, especially on, there's sidewalk disconnections and not great street lighting, and I think a lot of area-specific issues that could do with an advocate for our area. I'd also say that there have been some proposed changes to Map B that make sense and may be a good compromise. I don't know if it's possible, but would you be able to publish those maybe as a B1? Or I know that happened a lot in the Placer County redistricting. There were some hybrid maps and a good number of changes that went on during the public meetings or were published after the public meetings, and that may be a good idea if there's a consensus on some compromises that might meet a vast majority of many of the neighborhoods' requests.
Clerk, I know that there have been some suggestions presented to you via email. Are those available now for the public to see?
Yes, Joe, can Joe pop back up? I believe all the public comments that we've been receiving are being posted on our website.
Correct. So all of the public comments that we received are available on our redistricting website. I'm on it now. There's district boundary maps. All of the public submittals, there's maps A through F, and then there's a tab for public testimony. And that tab is being updated every day with all of the comments that we receive. And if I receive any comments that are to me, I send them over to the clerk's office also to get included in the record. So everybody should have everything within, I think we're within less than 24 hours of when we get it is when it's up online at this point now.
Okay, so yeah, take a look.
Yeah, most specifically, I think there were some suggestions coming out of the last public meeting, and I think they were detailed in an email to that, and are posted on the website. That being able to visualize those in a map posted to the website sooner rather than later, rather than waiting to the 24th to do all these tweaks. Like, if there's a consensus, get it on the website so that folks can look at it sooner rather than later. I'd ask that if that's an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak to this item? Can you state your name, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Kitchell, and I live in the Diamond Oaks neighborhood. And I would like to express my agreement with the prior speakers on a couple of items. One is, I wish we didn't have to go through this process, but here we are. And the other is that I think it's incredibly important that the infill areas be combined, that they be together. That Ellen spoke about those reasons very well, that there are requirements and needs in the older areas that are not present in the new areas, particularly the specific plans. And that includes the landscape and lighting districts, sidewalks, the roads, the age of the neighborhoods, all kinds of things that are very specific to the infill area. So I would like to support maps D, E, and F if you select one of those. If you select one of the 5 as given. One change that I would make is I would include the grounds in that area, because the grounds affects those residents that live right there. It doesn't really affect some of the areas that it could be included in otherwise. There are noise issues, there are traffic issues, there are all kinds of things that come up from the grounds, and I think those should be, therefore I think that little area, which has no residents, I don't believe, so I don't think it would affect the population differentials, but I think that that should be included in with the neighborhoods that it's next to.
Now, on some of the maps, like map B, the grounds could be in District 2 or District 3, depending on any tweaks we do. Are you suggesting it should be in the historic part, or?
Yes, I am.
And then also, if you don't mind, I know at the last meeting, there was a request, or maybe 2 meetings ago, a request by a commissioner to have a paper map of the specific plans available rather than just what's available online. Did we ever get any of those? Are they out on the table today?
I do
and
not
see what the
know.
specific, because they are available online.
Got a copy, just printed out from offline.
Apparently not. So
Yeah,
we'll
I just went to the specific plan website and found it.
make a note to bring those to the next meeting. Apologize for that.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very
Thank you.
much. Members of the public, you're welcome and encouraged to come up.
Hello, Paul Frank, Commissioners. My name is Kevin LaChance, and I'm a 13-year resident of Roseville, homeowner, and I'm Vice President of Roseville Heights Neighborhood Association, also the President of Arcona. And I've been a 13-year elections volunteer through Placer County. So I've been involved with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, just as background. Here I'm actually talking as a resident. So I wanted to thank all of you commissioners. I think it has been mentioned by a number of people. This is kind of a bit of a thankless job, but I am going to thank you for it now. This is a lot of work. It can get contentious. So obviously you have your own cognizance, make the decisions you need to make, and do what you can. There's always going to be somebody who's not necessarily happy with the lines, but, keep to what and draw those lines as best you can according to the communities and interest and the rules as put before you. I wanted to endorse, similar to some of the people who've already spoken, E and F from a perspective of keeping neighborhood communities together. Specifically about that. Both of those maps did the best job, I feel, of keeping those communities together, drawing those lines as closely as possible to the existing neighborhoods. And the neighborhoods themselves, if you're not familiar with the process, those have been drawn over time based typically off of specific plans. As developers come in, fill in those specific plans, they pass it over to the city. And Arcona, actually, as an organization that partners with the city, helps then draw those new neighborhoods out of those developments as they get brought into play. So specific plans probably vary a little bit from them, but they do reflect the neighborhood, especially the newer ones. The older ones probably have come up a little bit more organically over time. So those two maps specifically, I would say, do the best job of that. However, as also has been mentioned, map B, I think, might be a very good compromise map. I like that map, and to me personally, especially with my work in the elections, it's very important that we try to minimize that number of people who get skipped over because they shift from one district to another. I think that is a very painful number for people to deal with. I believe a previous representative of Sun City neighborhood spoke to this very well at our first meeting, and that's an important aspect. And I do very much appreciate that map B minimizes that of all of the maps on here. And so that speaks to me. I do have a lot of sympathy towards that if we can keep that number as small as possible. With tweaks on map B, if there would be possibilities that has already been mentioned and I think proposed to move Sierra Vista into District 2 in map B, so that's one piece. If any other adjustments could be made, Fiddyment Farm right now is carved up a little bit on that map in map B. A piece of it's been moved over into District 4. So if that could be adjusted in some way, perhaps by maybe bringing Wood Creek Oaks wholly within one district instead of another, maybe might be able to help balance that. Just my guesswork. Also, I know Caseburg Kingswood, they have already mentioned it. They very much would like to be in one district or another, if at all possible. And they're currently split in map B. So those would be the caveats that I would bring to map B. But again, I do have sympathies towards map B, so it is potentially a very good compromise. Last note, I just wanted to bring this up as because of the whole issue of jumping districts between maps as we move forward every 10 years, this is going to happen again and again unless perhaps the commission, our charter commission, takes note of this and maybe works a little bit harder. Maybe they need to consider moving to just strictly 2-year actual terms, because then we don't have a flip-flop. And then when our borders move, nobody ends up losing their right to vote or kind of having a commissioner or a city council member appointed to them by this district. So that would be my last note. So any questions for me before I sit back down?
Any questions from commissioners?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you guys, I didn't realize we were talking maps earlier. So first off, again, Jay Reed, Johnson Ranch, and I'd like to echo some of the other fellow speakers who commended this commission. I think that what you're doing is remarkable, and I think that you've done it in a very ethical and moral sense throughout this process. And getting the maps to where everyone's comfortable is a thankless job. With that being said, I really want to commend Chairman Frank. I think that, your comments on Tuesday saying, like, this is the map I submitted, map B. I want to be transparent about that, and I'm open to comments on it. I think that's where we need to be as a commission, as a community, is that we don't take ownership over one specific map and say, this is the right map, and it's, I think that a lot of what's going on right now is you're hearing folks from Sierra Vista, great, we can make that accommodation in map B. If I just look at maps D, E, and F, they do not meet your criteria of section B, number 3, which is that they have to be easily identifiable and understandable. They just don't pass the smell test. They look weird. I'm not going to accuse them of anything, but they just don't stand up to being easily identifiable and understandable to the community. The other things I'll say about maps D, E, and F, and I don't know who put this analysis together, but it's excellent, and it doesn't really have a name to it, so I'm going to call it the delay of voter participation analysis. And what we're looking at in maps D, E, and F is a 6-year gap of more than 28,000 voters. That is 25% of total voters in the city of Roseville. I believe that is just way, way too many for people to be delayed in how they choose, who they choose for their city council member. Obviously, if you look at that analysis, map B has the least, less than 10%. I think it's about 7% of total Roseville voters. So, I know that we're all striving for the perfect map, and I don't think that's achievable, you guys. I said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of excellence, and you guys are all you're all doing excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. Name for the record, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Marcus LaDuca. First, wanted to start off with an apology. In my comments, one of my comments on Thursday, I think after I spoke, one of the commissioners took it that I was directing that comment at the commission. That was not the case. As people have mentioned, you're doing some incredible work. It's a yeoman's effort you're undertaking to do this. It's most definitely thankless, because no matter what you do, no matter where you end up, someone's not going to be happy with you. So it's a yeoman's volunteer effort that you're cramming into a few months that should have been a little bit longer and maybe not so stressed, but that's not the hand that you were given by the federal government, and so you are trying to do an enormous amount of work in a very short period of time. So I just wanted to get that very much on the record. To reiterate, just briefly from my comments on Thursday, I support map B. I think the idea of the revisions that have been brought up by various folks, including bringing an historic Sierra Vista neighborhood into that district there in adjacent district makes sense very much relative to moving forward with, again, tweaks. I also want to tie into what the last two speakers mentioned. You had some great materials that you put on the back table for the meeting that I was at Thursday, and one of them is this map that's blue and yellow and white that was just mentioned. We lawyers have a tendency to focus on all the legal points and all the boxes that need to be checked to be able to comply with legal requirements such as what you are facing from the charter and also from state law. But we also like to, for those of us who work in the public realm, also refer to one of the criteria, and that is what we call the red face test. And you may do something that's very legal, but just doesn't pass the red face test. And in looking, and again, this one sheet of paper was extremely helpful because it pulled a lot of information together and put it on one sheet of paper, so that was great. I think it's very difficult because once you're done with your work, you're not defending it. The city then has to go out to explain to folks in the community why, when you look at maps A, C, D, E, and F, somewhere between 18 and 28,000 people, because this is population, not voters, but the voters represented in those areas don't get to vote for an elected official here in Roseville for 6 years. That doesn't pass the red face test, quite simply. I think you have a very difficult time explaining to that large of a segment of the voting population, how you do not get to vote for 6 years for your local elected official. That's problematical. You'll be done, but that is a difficult one in terms of folks looking at their ability to participate in local elections for the people that represent them on the city council. And so I did want to reiterate on map B, again, if you make some tweaks, having been involved in land use planning in this city for 32 years, that it is the map that most not just closely resembles existing districts, but keeps areas of the city whole. Keeps East Roseville, where I live, whole. It keeps Central Roseville whole. Again, with some tweaks that have been mentioned by other speakers. It keeps Highland Reserve and Highland Reserve North whole. It keeps North Roseville whole and West Roseville whole. It's the only map that does it. There is no other map is even close to that, and also is not looking at trying to really not disenfranchise folks for such a long period of time, such a major segment of the population. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Members of the public would like to speak on item 5.2.
Good afternoon, Aldo Panesci, live in Stone Ridge neighborhood. I have previously sent in a comment, and then I spoke at the MIDO meeting. Just wanted to reiterate, I support map B, okay with map C for the reasons that were mentioned earlier. Born in Roseville, a little bit different perspective, lived on Fig Street, Sierra Boulevard, George Lane, now live in East Roseville. So I've had the opportunity to be in the different neighborhoods, core neighborhoods, and then now in the eastern part of Roseville. And I think the map B keeps things together. I actually am going to go back and maybe look at the maps a little bit and offer a perspective to try to maybe make some of those tweaks that might be helpful to map B. I've had the pleasure for the last 5 years to volunteer for something called Invest Health Roseville. And we work with the core neighborhoods to try to improve lighting and sidewalks and things like that. We received a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation 5 years ago. I'm one of only 50 cities in the whole country to receive that grant. And then each year they kind of shrink down who gets the money. So now Roseville's in the last 10 cities in the United States that get this money. They want to give us some more money to continue this work with the core neighborhoods. And I think those are really good points that have been brought up about the core neighborhoods. But I also very much appreciate that map B kind of follows traditional lines and provides that opportunity for more people to, in a stable situation, vote and continue to vote and not displace too many people. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Although, can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Because you mentioned you were living in Stone Ridge and you're supporting map B. Map B does preserve over 90% of neighborhood associations, but it's not as high as D, E, or F.
Right.
D, E, and F keep Stone Ridge together. B actually does have a dividing line through it. Have you looked at that? Does that cause any pause for you?
I did look at it. It does not. I'm relatively new to the Stone Ridge area. I have not participated that much in the neighborhood association. But I looked at the map and I've discussed it with a few folks, and I personally don't have a problem with it. I'm not sure if some folks in Stone Ridge would. I just, from a Roseville perspective, I know we're supposed to talk about communities of interest. Well, my community of interest is Roseville, and I'm trying to do what's best for Roseville. I know that's not your charge. I mean, it is your charge, but not your charge. You have to follow very specific rules, and I'm fine with that. And I think I mentioned previously that C was okay as well. So yeah, I'm fine with the way that is. I'm just like B, best overall with regard to not being displaced, no disenfranchisement, et cetera. So, but thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you.
Other members of the public in the audience?
Good afternoon, Richard Ricucci. I wasn't planning on speaking today, so I'll try and be brief. First of all, I don't believe neighborhood association should be the only criteria. I think it's important, but I think there are those 5 or 4 criteria that you're supposed to be looking at: geographical, compactness, areas of interest. Map B does the best and also displaces quite a few less people for the 6-year period. But I'm here actually today to warn you. I guess I hate to say it that way. It's not a threat, it's a warning just to make you aware. Some of you know what happened at Placer County with the redistricting process up there. And it got all political at the end, or maybe in the middle too. I don't know. I didn't follow it that carefully, but what I hear. And I'm fear that on the 24th, and I will not be able to attend that meeting, I'll be out of town, that certain elements of the community will be here to maybe combine two maps that weren't even presented. We asked the people out in the community to submit maps. They submitted 23 maps, and your committee selected 6 to move forward. If I had my druthers, I would say you have to pick one. I'm not an attorney. I don't speak as eloquent as Mr. LaDuca. I'm glad that Mr. Pinesci came up after him, so I wouldn't sound so bad. But you do have to be careful about making wholesale changes on any of the maps, actually. Little tweaks here and there to adjust census tracts or whatever that don't affect many people might be okay, in my opinion. But I just hopefully when I'm out and about on the 24th and try and tune into this meeting, that I don't see what happened at Placer County. And I do echo Mr. Pinesci's comments. I'm a lifelong resident of Roseville. Most of you know who I am, if not all of you. And Roseville is our common interest. And so we need to look at the big picture. I sent that in on the 20th of December already, that we have to look at the big picture of what map meets the most criteria in the best possible way. Again, no map is going to be perfect, even a map with a few little tweaks. It will not be perfect. But which one meets the overall? You need to look at the big picture and see what map is the best identifiable, has the best traffic flow, and one last point, that isn't separated by a lot of major physical barriers like the freeway, the tracks, the creeks, etc. And I think some of the other maps, other than B and maybe C, have a problem in that area in my consideration. Thank you very much. If you have any questions? No? Thank you.
Do we have any phone calls? There are 4 folks on the phone. If there's nobody else in the audience, we'll take those. If anybody after the phone calls would still like to come forward in the audience, you're welcome to.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Kayla Scott. Anybody else in the audience take those? If anybody after the phone call would still like to come forward in the audience, welcome to.
Could you state your name one more time?
Kayla Scott.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kayla Scott. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Roseville. I serve our city on our library board, and I'm also a Leadership Roseville graduate. I was born and raised here. My family has been raising Roseville residents since the 1930s. I'm currently raising our 5th generation Roseville residents, so I do have an emotional investment in our city. I would like to advocate for the adoption of MAP B for a couple reasons. One, it was mentioned earlier that it is a significant criteria that we maintain easily identifiable and understandable maps. I believe MAP B is the closest to what we currently have, which would be easy to transition into for all local residents. It would make the most sense. And 2, I believe that communities of interest are more than just neighborhoods and neighborhood associations. You know, they are the organizations and the nonprofits that make us one community, such as the Tommy Apostolus Fund, the Roseville City School District Foundation, school sports, those communities of interest to me, maybe it's because I have a young one, but I know we are a young city full of families, which those are also their communities of interest. I think that those are the communities that bring Roseville together as an entire city for the betterment of all of us. I do also worry that if we were to adopt a map that is more disruptive than B, are we setting a precedent that we will dismantle these districts every 10 years as we continue to grow? So for now, as we transition into having districts for the first time, map B does allow us that consistency and stability that we've enjoyed in the city of Roseville so far. I also believe that map B would help to put us on a path of being the least distracting. There's a lot more bigger fish to fry with the city. We have more pressing issues to get to so that our city's management can focus on the real issues that we've been facing. In closing, I would really encourage you to adopt map B. I think it's going to give us some stability, some consistency in a time when I think everybody's lives are in such an upheaval these days that it would be nice that something seems a little bit easier out of all of the other options. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I got a message from someone saying that they tried to call, but the line is busy. Does that happen?
There's only a certain number of lines, so
Okay.
she has everybody on hold, so you got to keep calling back.
Okay, just for people at home, if you are trying to call and you're getting a busy signal, try again in a few minutes. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Kayla?
We have questions for Kayla. All right, thank you, Kayla.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Next caller.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Jeremy Scott.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Scott, and I'm born and raised here. We have a 3.5-year-old daughter who will be going to all the schools in the area as well. I'm pretty familiar with the city as well. And I encourage the adoption of map B because I think it's the closest of what we have now. This is also going to minimize the disruption of redistricting. So I would like to see map B, and especially with everything going on now. Why not just keep it the same? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jeremy? Next caller, please.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jeff Harper.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Harper. I'm a 55-year Roseville resident. I'm also the Roseville Green HOA Vice President and homeowner in District 2. Both my wife, Nosheen, and I are also Roseville business owners. And as a family and individuals, we've served hours and hours of volunteer community service. My 12-year-old son, Connor, has already accumulated an impressive number of volunteer hours. Our family is invested in Roseville, and how our city is managed is very important to us. In my opinion, map A, C, E, and F seem to be drawn with a political agenda that would not reflect the needs or best interests of the community. Map C and F would disenfranchise 30,000 voters for 6 years. Some cities would also be split into 2 districts. I strongly urge the committee to disregard these options into the waste bin. Map B reflects our growing community while preserving stability for its constituents and businesses alike. It also makes the most geographical sense. I strongly request you approve map B. It is clearly the best option. you guys have any questions, I'll stay on the line. I'm getting some phone feedback.
All right, any questions for Jeff from commissioners?
I have a question. I couldn't hear if he was saying B or D to adopt.
Map B.
B like boy?
Yes, B as in boy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harper. Is there anybody else on the line?
Yes, map.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Gary Kukowski.
Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, yeah, my name is Gary Kukowski. I'm a 10-year resident of East Roseville. I live in the Stonebridge neighborhood, and I want to voice my support for maps E and or F. I believe both those maps keep the neighborhoods associations together as best as possible, and also do the best at retaining the communities of interest. I know there's been a lot of interest in map E. Particularly what I see from a resident of Stone Ridge is it splits our neighborhood. I have much more in common with those folks in our east area than I do with some of the folks up in Stanford Ranch or Highland Reserve area. Although a great area, but their issues and concerns are different. They have the Highway 65 corridor. We're separated by I-80 and the railroad. Like I said, our concerns are different. And so I'd like to see East Roseville area kept together as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? All right, thank you. Next caller, please.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Cindy Mitchell.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Hi. I've been a lifelong resident here in Roseville. I've raised 4 kids here, and I appreciate all the time that has gone into making the city run so well. I've examined the map, and I feel that map B is probably the best option for us. I feel that map B takes into account nearly all of our neighborhood associations and has very low deviation between the districts. Map B is most like what we currently have, and I don't feel like we need to keep changing for the sake of change. If minor adjustments are made to improve this map, I'm in favor, but certainly please do not consider another map. Thank you.
Thank
you. Are there any more callers?
Yes, there's 4.
Callers?
Sorry.
3 down.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Kathleen Stearns.
Thank you, Kathleen. Go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody on the commission, all my neighbors that are trying to tackle this impossible task. I am in the neighborhood of Stanford Neighborhood Association and in the Highland Park area. I also have been in Roseville for almost 20 years. I have gone through the map. It's of great interest to me. And I just wanted to say that I endorse the neighborhood maps of D as in David, E, Eagle, F, Frank. And the reason I like D is because if you look at it, it divides the city into quadrants. The other ones make these long reaches into neighborhoods that rarely have contact with each other, either socially, politically, or whatever. I am in the eastern section. I am in the northeastern section as opposed to Stone Ridge, which is more in the southern eastern section. Our concerns, as the prior caller said, are different. We do have Highway 65 as our source of transportation and all the problems that come up with that. But my problems in transportation in eastern Roseville are different than the problems that are associated with the southwest corner, more closer to the Citrus Heights area. I hope you consider that. It's hard enough for such a large city as it grows to have some continuity, and neighborhood associations are a very strong community agent to help people feel like they belong to the community and aren't just one of a huge number. Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Carol Weber.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that I am in support of D, E, and F with some tweaking and some changes on those maps. And I do believe that the ages of the communities, in Caseburg, Kingswood, I purchased my home there back in 1989. And the neighborhood ages does dictate. I know some of the older historic Roseville, I think, should be also in a similar, in the same district. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm echoing on my end. But the last thing I wanted to say was I am concerned about the 7-day versus the 30-day, which the Charter Review Committee put in place. And as the attorney was talking, saying that that was a possibility later on down the road, they could come back and you would have to review something. I think the Charter Review put the 30 days in place for a reason, and I do think it should be followed. If it means putting something in for 7 days, and then, it's a little bit elongated period for fundraising for our city council members, I think that is probably the lesser worry than the 8 years or 10 years that we'll be having these maps. So also one last thing, the two men that got up and spoke about the smell test, and that D, E, and F did not pass the smell test. We all have our own nose, and it passed the smell test for me. So thank you.
Any questions from commissioners for the caller? Thank you very much. Next caller.
Thank you. Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Lisa Larkin.
Go ahead, Lisa.
First, I wanted to, I think it was Karen that made the comments at the end of the last meeting regarding the gerrymandered comment. Was that correct? Was that Karen?
Yes.
Commissioner Karen?
Yes.
Great. I wanted to thank you, Karen, personally, about those comments that you made about gerrymandering with no specific reasons as to why these people felt these maps were gerrymandered. I really appreciate you calling that out. Those comments are clearly trying to bias you, the commission, and not just the commission, but the public. And this campaign to sway the commission and the public without substantiation are reprehensible. And we're still hearing them today, as you just heard another person comment. Smell test, politically biased. We've heard a lot of these comments from, or not these comments from these people, but we've also heard a lot of comments from former elected planning commissioners, developers, attorneys for developers, and they announce themselves as commenting, and that's their position. And they may or may not have stake in the results. And a few of those comments have come from some of those folks. So I want to thank you, Karen, for bringing that out front. I also want to say, let's remember that when we went to districts in 2020, the council completely ignored the public and voted in a map that was just terrible. And one of the council members even said it can be fixed after the census, right? You know, sorry, take it for what it is. We can fix it later. So that's what we're doing now. We're fixing that map, and because it was terrible, yes, it's going to be more challenging and will require more changes to make a map that is best for the residents of Roseville for the next 10 years and moving forward. Every 10 years, we're going to have to move voters from block to block because we are in districts now. That's a fact. And yes, that should be a consideration, but it should not be the overwhelming consideration in this. I know that all of you on the commission will continue to look at all the maps and also give as much weight to the members of the community since they were ignored when the last map was drawn. I'm also very much in favor of you making modifications to any of the maps selected to make it better for the city of Roseville as a whole. And in fact, the public was expecting you to do that, right? These are draft maps. And so we do expect you to do that. And I will support the map that you as the independent commission puts forward. But I hope that you're ignoring the campaign to make 4 particular maps that keep getting called out as gerrymandered, smell test, shenanigans, you name it. I hope that you will look past that and, you know, pick the best map for the Roseville community and make your tweaks. And I also wanted to say I really like the idea of the person who mentioned going to a 2-year election cycle in the future, because every 10 years we are going to be moving voter blocks. And so that's a great idea for a charter change. Thank you so much.
Any questions for the caller? Seeing none? And do you mind giving us an update on how many more callers?
We have one more after this.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Kathleen Crawford.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Frank and the commissioners. Again, my name is Kathleen Crawford, and I live in Sun City, Roseville. I listened to the meeting on Thursday evening at Shalito Pool, and I wish to share my perspective. Yes, it was surprising to get a legal opinion that changing a map would create a further delay of adding 30 days to vote for final approval to forward it to the City Council. In my opinion, legal opinions are often a surprise, even to the lawyers, but just kidding. The important thing is that this was brought to your attention in a completely transparent way. And it looks, even after the explanation today, that you have 2 choices or 2 routes of action. The majority could decide on one of the maps, A through F, as posted for the previous 30 days, and after hearing opinion at these 6 meetings, forward it to the City Council for implementation. Or you could make adjustments to maps A through F after determining from public opinion that such adjustments are in the public interest and warrant extending the period by 7 or 30 days public notice period. This might impact candidates by shortening their fundraising time period. I heard a lot of discussion on the issue of voters who might not vote for City Council for a period of 6 years. And why would this be? Because previous changes to City Council elections staggered terms with odd-numbered districts and even-numbered districts voting every 2 years. And at the time this was implemented, there must have been whole council districts that were delayed by an additional 2 years from voting for City Council. The public policy in favor of staggered terms won out over the delayed vote for 2 districts in the city. I think the city survived quite well, and the policy of staggered terms is important for continuity and not turning over the entire City Council at one time. Currently, the redrawing of district lines will impact some voters by balancing the populations according to the 2020 census, and thus delaying their vote for a council member by a period of time. It's also true that some voters will have been able to previously vote for city council districts in 2020, and by virtue of the redistricting, those voters are able to vote again in 2022 in the new district. This is inevitable with staggered terms and will occur again in the 2030 census redistricting, when again the lines will be redrawn due to continued growth in Roseville. My point here is that it is inevitable and unavoidable, no matter how the lines are drawn, especially any time there is significant population growth. Another factor is that the previous council adopted a map that which was not contiguous nor compact, and I am purposely avoiding the G word. This complicated the shift of population with the current census numbers into roughly equal population districts. As a former elected official who has dealt with complex and controversial matters, my advice is to stay out of the weeds in making your decisions. Focus on what the voters' approved language in the charter outlines for you. In my experience, Roseville is a city of neighborhoods. The history of Roseville is a small town, and much of the development has meant to retain the small town feel with the growth through neighborhoods. It's not important to me whether Sun City Roseville is in District 4 or District 5. Rather, it is important that Sun City be in a single district so that its neighborhood can be preserved and enhanced. As a 10-year resident of Sun City Roseville, I recommend that you adopt a map that best serves the interests of the whole city along the priorities established in the charter. If, after the public hearings are completed, the majority of the commission determines that some tweaking or alignment would best serve the city, then go ahead and take the extra time. This is something that lasts 10 years. However, there is no perfect map, and you may find that, like whack-a-mole problems, it's difficult to balance all the perspectives and options. I do appreciate the dedication of time from each of you, the city staff, and the public who are commenting. I appreciate the transparency and commitment to public participation in this process, and I will continue to be monitoring this. Good luck on your work.
Thank you. Any questions for the caller? Looks like we do have one more call.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Billy Bennett.
Go ahead, Billy.
Hi, I'll keep this really short, but I've been a Roseville resident for the last 10 years. And one thing that really stands out to me about Roseville is a great place to raise a family. I have 3 kids myself. But the biggest thing that stands out to me is everything that Roseville does, everybody does a really good job, and everything just seems to make sense. To me, right now, Roseville's map plan B makes the most sense to me. It's easily identifiable, and it's probably the least changed of all the other different maps that are out there. So if for my input, I would like to recommend map B.
All right, thank you very much. Is that our final caller? That's our final caller. I hesitate, but are there any members of the audience who haven't spoken yet? Who'd like to speak? So, seeing none. On public comment, is there anything from commissioners that you'd like to?
I have a question.
Yes.
So regarding this document that we see here, and these people in yellow, so 4 years ago, they voted for a city council member, is that right? They will not be able to vote for a city council member for 2 years.
Under the draft map, depends on the draft map, yeah.
Under these drafts. So they voted 4 years ago, and their vote is being delayed for 2 years.
If you choose a particular map.
Okay, and the reason I ask, I mean, it's troubling for me, having worked in elections all my life, and this number here, it's very important in my consideration. But to say that we are disenfranchising people for 6 years sounds a little sensational to me. It is not good that these people will not be able to vote for another 2 years, but to accuse us of disenfranchising people bothers me a lot. And I just wanted to get that out there, that these are people that voted 4 years ago, and they will delay their vote for 2 years. Correct? Okay.
And there'll also be others who will have voted in 18 and 20 and 22. Okay, also on that paper, each map with the yellow highlights shows in certain districts would members of those districts be for lack of a term disenfranchised for 6 years compared to others on that particular map. And then there's an aggregate number where it says 6-year gap, depending on which map you choose. Any other comments regarding public comment?
I would echo some of what you just mentioned because it did come up a lot in the public comments. And, you know, I would probably just add the comment that one of the reasons I got involved in this whole redistricting process was because I was so disappointed with how it went last time. I personally met with every single city council member and, well, except for Allard, who wasn't able to connect, but by phone. But talked with all of them. And, you know, oftentimes I was told, this is just for 2 years. New census data is going to come out. The whole thing's going to change. And that was used as justification for passing what I feel is a horrible map. I think our existing map boundaries are terrible. And so I just want to put that out there, that when we get a lot of public comment about, let's just, you know, this map is better because it doesn't change a lot, that to me would need a foundation of the status quo as a positive. And I just, you know, for people that are talking about why they don't want something changed, if they could add a little bit more explanation as to why it's working so well for their part of the community, that would be helpful to me, because the community members that I have spoken to don't think that the current map is great. So I do want to put that out there, because this idea of let's not change things isn't one of our criteria. And so if that is a big thing to you, if you could explain how the status quo is best serving your community of interest, that would better connect it for me. Thanks.
We're kind of moving this way. If you'd like to, if you do have a comment on public comment. Anybody? Jefferson, alternates? Okay. One or maybe more of the public mentioned in terms of splitting neighborhoods and whether they thought it was okay or not, and whether it affects anybody's decision or not. Keep in mind that of the 6 largest by population neighborhood associations, we're talking about any given map is talking about dividing the 5 biggest. So none of the maps are talking about dividing a smaller neighborhood association. They're talking about dividing the ones that are 2 or 3 times bigger than some of the other ones. West Park is the largest by number. It's not being discussed in any of the maps to be divided. Fitment Farm, there is one of the maps that carves a little bit out of there, but that one's one of the largest. Blue Oaks, I think map A divides Blue Oaks, and again, that's one of the largest ones. Quail Glen gets divided in map D, and then Caseburg and Stone Ridge get divided in map B. And again, all of those are, by population, pretty big neighborhood associations. Again, don't know if it affects anybody's decision, but just want to kind of bring that out. And also something that one of the callers said, just kind of reiterating that the neighborhood, not neighborhood association, and I think she actually used the term neighbor, that even though we are a growing city, we are still neighbors. Regardless of the size of our population, we might be closer to neighbors that live across the street than others. And so I hope that the spirit of this commission is such where we don't make a decision based out of fear that there are elements or that there are special interests and things like that. I will defend my wife's going to kill me on this, lawyers and developers, and just as much as I will a president of a neighborhood association or my neighbor next door, and I hope we all will do that, really to try and keep that spirit that Roseville is, we saw the signs, we are one Roseville, that we keep that in mind. And on the same token, whatever your views are on whether we have districts or not, that we really do encourage all future city council members not to be locked into a district, but to be able to see the whole city and make decisions that are best for the city. We're not drawing district boundaries to keep them in. It's simply to make sure that they do have a good idea of different parts of the city. So having said that, I will close public comment. This was for information only, no action required. Move on to item number 5.3.
Hi, everybody. Joe Mandel again. I'm back. Item 5.3 is really just an item for us to be able to receive more community of interest public testimony and talk about draft maps more. And this was for me to introduce, this is going to be a little hard to do, but the blue and white form that we have at the table, and it's available online, and it's asking about community of interest testimony. And so that can be submitted online. It can be submitted to the clerk. You can drop it off if you're there in the meeting room today. And really what this is we want to hear from you about what is important. And there is a question on this form that says, which draft map do you think best serves the interests of the city of Roseville, the interests of the residents of the city of Roseville? And then there's a choice to check draft map A, B, C, D, E, or F. And then please describe what you like or do not like about the draft maps that you select above. And so this is information that would be very important and useful to the commission, as well as there's some information for you to fill out about what is your community of interest. And again, a community of interest is defined as a group of people in the same geographically definable area who share common social and economic interests. So on this form, there are a couple of questions about what are the common interests in your community and describe how they're important. Explain the geographical location of your community of interest. What are the physical boundaries? What is the reason your community of interest should be considered in the redistricting process? And please describe how the redistricting process could have an impact on your community. So I wanted to use this item as an opportunity for people to talk about the draft maps as well as their community of interest and maybe answer any of these questions, or just wanted to let everybody know that this information is available for you to submit to the commission at any time. And so that's all I have for that item. So back to you, Chair Frank.
Thank you. Do any commissioners has anybody brought new communities of interest to our attention since our last meeting a couple days ago? I know we have in the Dropbox on the mapping tool, there was neighborhood association specific plans, not necessarily they were called out as communities of interest, but we did ask for multifamily housing as a community of interest. We asked for senior living as a community of interest, but I don't think we've really gotten any other communities of interest. Some people have talked about, voters in general being a community of interest or certain kinds of voters, but by definition, that's not really a community of interest based on social and economic similarities. So we really haven't gotten very many historical areas. We've talked about that as well as being a community of interest. Does anybody from the public like to speak about any communities of interest that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Again, any decision that you make is not going to change anything for the Blue Oaks neighborhood. I'm still going to do the same things I've been doing before with the neighborhood association. We'll be just as active no matter what map you choose. And we are a community of interest. We are a very active neighborhood association. Again, but if you divided us, nothing is going to change. They're still going to be included in everything that we do. There's no change. Thank you.
Any other public comment on item 5.3? Any phone calls? Okay, we'll close public comment. Again, this was for information only as well, no action required. Joe, you're up next for item 5.4.
Okay, excellent.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, I moved kind of quickly.
I was just wondering, I had some questions about the map that Julia posted in public comment, and I was wondering if this would be an appropriate time to ask her questions about that, just because I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around it.
Okay, probably would have been better under 5.2, but.
Well, I can definitely talk
there will-
about communities of interest.
If there's no objection, because we can always go over that after we've gone through each agenda item, and I kind of open it up for you all.
Whichever,
Because it is true that
appropriate.
some members of the commission and I think of the public have submitted some tweaks that you'd like to speak about. So Joe, if you don't mind going on with 5.4 and then.
Yes, I will. Again, hi, everybody. Joe Mandel from the City Attorney's Office. And this item, 5.4, is really just to talk about our upcoming meeting schedule. And in my presentation earlier, I had a little item on there about how the next meetings coming up, perfect, are January 18th at the Martha Riley Library at 6 p.m. That's Tuesday night. And then Thursday night of next week, January 20th at St. John's Episcopal Church. That is on Pleasant Grove, west of Fittyment Road. And so then we will have on Monday, January 24th is when we have scheduled for our final map adoption meeting. Sort of an asterisk on that from our discussion, on Thursday night and tonight. And so that is the upcoming meeting schedule. Again, public meeting number 5 on Tuesday night at 6 p.m., Riley Library, and Thursday, 6 p.m. at St. John's Episcopal Church. And back to you, Chair Frank.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Joe regarding item 5.4 from commissioners on the scheduling? Seeing none, open it up for public comment. And state your name for the record.
I'm sorry. Ellen Bach Riley. The question, is the meeting on the 24th open to the public?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be here in chambers. Because of the technology that we have here, the capabilities, it will also be televised. We'll have phone-in at that one. The next two won't be televised, won't have phone-in, but we do have audio recordings of them. How do the audio recordings work? Is it on the website?
Tape recorded.
But in terms of you just go to the website and click a button, you can hear it?
It would be just like watching a YouTube video, but instead you're clicking on, just an audio link instead of a video link, yes.
Yes. All of our meetings are open to the public and encouraged to have the public attend. Any other comments from the public on item 5.4? Any phone calls? Closed public comment. Again, this was for information, no action required. Before we adjourn, I generally like to kind of take the pulse and just kind of hear from others on the commission, and this will be it's not an agenda item, but this will be a good time for us to talk about some of the things that were submitted by email regarding particular maps and any tweaks that we recommend. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, basically, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what's different about the map that Julia submitted in public comment. And as near as I can tell, it looks like it's draft A, except the southern border of District 3 is dropped down to Pleasant Grove and Roseville Parkway. Is that basically the major change?
So there were a couple other slight changes. It ended up being very similar to Map A. So we heard from people that Quail Glen and Pleasant Grove wanted to be together in entirety. And so I tried to make that happen by bringing, like you mentioned, District 3 down. The Caseburg-Kingswood Neighborhood Association identifies more with Foothills Junction. And then we've heard from people about that baseline traffic increasing as Roseville is growing. So kind of like Map A does, it goes along baseline. And then we got some community of interest survey that I went back into that described specifically north of Vineyard, west of Foothills, talking about going to the St. Clair's Church, talking about being part of that community up towards Pleasant Grove. So I tried to keep them in with that community of interest that they described, and then cleaned up some of the lines. Karen had suggested north of McAnally being a cleaner, I don't know, we talked on one of the maps, so it wasn't just from Map A, but it was B, yeah. So talking about making some adjustments to that so it's a bit cleaner along Pleasant Grove. Yeah. So I tried to take the feedback about making these more identifiable using Washington, Pleasant Grove, Roseville Parkway as more natural boundaries for that District 2 historic area. And then I know for C and D, we got some feedback about the Highland Reserve area, Sanford Ranch, that Galleria area being a community of interest. So I tried to incorporate that. Again, it's like dominoes, but I think the sooner we can kind of throw out ideas of how we shift it, and, you know, if people have things where they want to say, like, I absolutely hate this adjustment, I would love to hear that. Well, probably more so I would love to hear anything that you do like, but would love to hear both to try to get us ahead of the 24th, so it's not like, I think it's good for the public to kind of hear where we're going, so they have time at the next two meetings if they want to say, no, Commissioner Sweeney is absolutely wrong. I do not identify with west of Foothills, and I can be corrected.
I really like this map that you submitted. I think it's the best one I've seen, honestly. It is the cleanest. The only thing that might have to be looked at, I think, is someone mentioned about the grounds, and I don't know what that population block is right there.
Caseburg, Kingswood. So I'd be interested to hear more at the next meetings, but it's part of our neighborhood association, and I would really consider Caseburg, Kingswood, and the grounds stay together with that Junction Road. Okay. We talked with the Transportation Roseville office when they changed those yellow lights about, okay, well, on the 4th of July, when the fireworks are happening, we need to have green and red lights for the turns, not those flashing yellows. So the grounds, a lot of the traffic's coming from West Roseville, and I do think that keeping it with District 4, but I'd love to hear from people, yeah.
Yeah, and what I like about this too is that it does incorporate what a lot of these maps have in common, which is District 1 and District 5. We see the commonality of that in a lot of these maps. So really what seems to be more an issue is the lines between 2, 3, and 4 and exactly where we draw those. And I think this does a really good job of keeping those older neighborhoods together and also drawing lines that people can, I mean, I don't need to have these street numbers even written down. I know what they are. You can tell. So I like it.
Renee?
Something to consider.
I like it too, and I live in Caseburg, Kingsburg, like you, so I am a fan. Here's my questions, though. So it sounds like it's a compilation of all the maps that you tweak, so then it makes it a totally different map as opposed to us tweaking one specific map?
Yeah, so what's interesting is if you look at my link, I started on map 15, which was map E, and then it ended up with the adjustments, because you have to make then other adjustments, it looks more like A.
It does.
I do like it. I just think then for our purposes, if it's a completely map on its own, so to speak, more than just a tweak or two of one of the 6 maps, I personally would want to then rethink the 7-day, which I was in favor of before your map.
Yeah, well, and it would be interesting to know, do we have to decide now about the 7-day versus 30-day, or can we decide that on the 24th, depending on what we do?
Like I mentioned earlier, you can decide that on the 24th, but I was kind of hoping to get some discussion around that, to kind of see your consensus maybe, or what you might be thinking on that, so staff can better prepare.
I liked the 7-day at the beginning, but if we're thinking anything about moving this type of a map forward, I would rethink my 7-day, because this map to me is just totally different than the 6th. It's not just tweaking one, it's almost a completely new map on its own.
So then query whether or not if you're thinking about a 30 days, whether you want another 5 public hearings or not. I don't think it's required, but it is an option.
This becomes a 7th map. Ultimately, this is, and we don't really have any guidelines around a delta on any particular map that we've already held public comment on in terms of whether or not it's acceptable or not. However, this now becomes a 7th standalone map. Any iteration of a map is going to be some tweak of some map.
Yeah,
Whether it's
B1, B2. Yeah.
whether it's B or whether it's 19. We wouldn't want 19, but you could tweak that map too. So I appreciate the work that you've put into this, and it at first blush is a pretty good looking map. But I am concerned that now, instead of the public comment that we've already received on 6 maps, there's now a 7th in the mix, and the people who have attended the first 3 of our meetings, wait, is this 3? This is 4.
Yeah.
Now have been asked to review and give us feedback on those 6, and now we've added another consideration potentially into this. I again, I appreciate the work that you've put into it, but I also want to make sure that the people who have had opportunity in their districts to give us commentary on the 6 that we down selected to on the 20th, on December 20th, they have fair hearing as well.
And just to kind of just, I'll then let everyone else comment on it. When I approached this, my goal was not to create a new map, but rather find the bright spots that we keep hearing about, because we do seem to have like a large number of people that will call for D, E, or F, and then a large number of people that will call for B, and then some people that will call for C or D. And so it's like, okay, well, why do they like those? Someone, like, they start to give specifics, like, okay, I like that this one's like a quadrant. And so it's like, okay, how do we make map B incorporate that? So I do think that we get a better result when we try to find a compromise map, as opposed to which map is going to get the most support on its own. Do you know what I mean?
I agree with Jeff, though. I think what happens is this becomes map 7 because it's such a compilation of all of them, as opposed to doing a couple of tweaks on one map. And it's not, I do like this map.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, too different. And then, as he said, this is our 4th public hearing, and we've already had comment on the 6 that we've put forward.
And does council have any input on whether, because this is our opportunity to listen to the public, Julia, obviously you are a member of the public as well, but is there a distinction between the deliberative process that we're supposed to be engaging in on the 24th and whether or not we are more receiving overall public comment?
So, I'm sorry, what was your question?
My question is, the deliberative process is ongoing, but it really takes place in earnest starting on the 24th, when we begin, I think, narrowing the selection and either accepting a map or tweaking. So
Line drawing.
Right. So is there any distinction in your view between that deliberative process starting on the 24th in earnest? I view this from my perspective as we're holding 6 meetings to listen.
Yeah.
Right. And we've already had a down select from the number that we had down to 6 on December 20th. So and I'm not trying to shortcut you,
Totally.
Commissioner Sweeney. I'm just trying to make sure that we understand whether or not, is there going to be a map 7, and does map 7 belong on the 24th, or is it now part of our ongoing deliberations as we, again, I feel like we should be listening right now, and then on the 24th, we take all of that input on the 6 maps that we have, that we selected, and that becomes the time when we get our sleeping bags out and our jugs of coffee and go at it.
To kind of answer that question, I think that, when we decided on the 6 maps, it was agendized, and we made a motion, and we voted. We would have to agendize, in my view, we should agendize it. Someone makes a motion, we discuss it, and then decide to add it as map 7. I don't know if there's time to do it. I'll reserve any other comments about the map itself, but in terms of procedurally.
Can't do that at public hearings, though, right? These are public hearings.
So the charter requires that the draft maps be published with the redistricting plan and put on 30 days with all these public hearings. So if you're thinking about a draft map 7, obviously you're basically starting over with that additional map.
It's A with
I would compare this to, like, as an English teacher, so we've got our draft. And now we're going through with the red pen, we're drawing on it, we're saying, okay, I want to move this line up here. And I consider this kind of like my feedback on the maps that we've gotten. Now, we can get into like semantics. Is it a new map? Is it an adjusted map?
But it would be then, because you're saying maps plural as opposed to tweaking a singular map.
But at the end of the day, I started with map 15, map E, and all changes came from that. So we can quantify what changes we want to define as tweaks, what changes are new maps. Like if we want to create those thresholds, I don't think we do.
If you started with map E, how many changes do you think you made to map E to get to this map?
Not that many. I mean, like the changes really are Caseburg Kingswood moves over where's map E?
It's like it's closer to A to me. There's only
Yeah.
3 areas that were changed.
I think the problem for me, or the, not problem, the issue is that we now in a public format
Yeah.
have referenced maps plural. You have as far as, and again, I really like this map, but I want it to be very transparent for our community. And I think we've just used maps plural, starting with this map. You mentioned that you, that it looks like map A.
Yes.
You took in consideration what people had said about D, E, and F. That to me then is, we're talking about all 6 maps that you've taken tweaks from. And it's now out there to the public. So to me, it does need to be a standalone map.
Isn't that what we're doing on the 24th? My goal is to show you for the changes, like
This could have been, during the map creation process, a map that was submitted, and it wasn't. And the maps that we have to consider today are 6. Again, I appreciate the effort, and you've incorporated what you have heard, but
Yeah.
my sense is still that this is a conversation best had on the 24th.
Well, I'd like to get consensus, because my understanding of what we have been doing at these meetings is trying to understand communities of interest, what on different draft maps. And rather than to say, 60% are getting behind this map and we're just going to disappoint 40%, I would rather find something that we can make, 90, 80.
Julia, do you have the numbers in terms of the 6-year gap? Do you have numbers of?
No, this is all just, because I think we need to be more transparent about where we are going as commissioners.
Exactly.
And so this is where this is when I've listened, I've read the feedback. This is, if I were to say what I think I've heard, this is what I've heard. And so I wanted to put that in the public record. And on January 24th, I'm probably going to have different adjustments on it based on what we hear on Tuesday and Thursday.
Can I make a suggestion? Because, I don't know if we all agree that this is, I'm uncomfortable saying this is the direction we're moving forward, because we've been moving forward in a direction that I think has been pretty solid.
Yeah.
I don't think we should say tonight that we're in consensus on this or that we're moving forward on this. What I would like to see, if you don't mind, is say you started with map E or started with map A, whichever one you want to pick, and come up with 5 or 6 tweaks.
Yeah.
Not big changes, but tweaks. And that way we can kind of see where that was. That's my preference. And then I think it would be better served in terms of the 24th. We say, okay, we have the map already. These are Julia's tweaks to that map.
And it's kind of a moving target too. Like there's still, we've heard from 3/5 of the districts, right? So like you even said, well, this map might change again after we hear from District 4 or 5. So I think we're kind of saying, well, great, just reserve it all and hold it. When you hear from all 5 districts, then maybe say, oh, let's start with E, move these 3 lines, and that's what I want.
Can we get clarification? Maybe, that would help me. I'll ask for clarification for myself. With the 6 maps that we put forward, because you had mentioned this about the 24th, is the idea that we are taking one of those 6 and in either adopting it as is a standalone or making tweaks to a specific map as opposed to combining several of the maps?
Michelle, if you don't mind, if I can answer that first, since I was at the meeting. So we went down the dais and asked everybody kind of how we are now. Do you want to maybe vote on one or tweak. And I think the consensus was generally that pick a map to tweak it on the 24th.
A map.
A map. One map to tweak it. That's what we discussed, and I wrote down everybody's comments in my notes here.
That was Thursday, when I wasn't here?
That was Thursday, yeah. And so, I think their consensus among us was to pick a map and tweak it. That's why I'm saying if you want to see these changes, I think it's best if you pick a map and tweak it.
Yeah, technically that is what happened. It's just maybe I have a different threshold for how many changes can be made. And the fact that at the end it can resemble a couple, to me, speaks of compromise. And so I guess I'll just say, like, my purview is we try to please as many communities of interest as possible.
But I think we also need some of those numbers from the demographer, because if a lot of people are saying, we want to minimize the 6-year gap as much as possible, but we don't have that information, or how many neighborhood associations are kept intact.
Yep. So can I submit this to
don't know
Jeb, or how do I,
This was supposed to go to Jed, city clerk, and Joe.
Yeah, it
At the
did.
very least, the city clerk, so
Okay.
it can be published.
We just got it right before the meeting.
Yeah, like 3 hours ago.
So, by email?
By email, yes.
Email it, who did you email it to?
I emailed it to you, the clerk, and Joe.
Okay.
Can it be submitted as a standalone map?
So it can be submitted as a public comment, right? We're not taking a 7th map right now.
But they said submit it and get it to Jeb for changes, so can we?
Right, so,
Just to see what her numbers add up to.
But then
behind
that's
the
a
scenes-
Are we
standalone, that's a
asking the
standalone
public at
map.
large to do that then?
But
To
I have
submit
asked the public
their
at
map?
large to do that. I was out in the lobby on Tuesday telling people to send
Standalone map.
Everybody, hold on. So, what we talked about was, among the 6 maps, tweaking them. That's what we discussed.
Yeah.
And not everyone in the public who makes a public comment, especially if it's just maybe one person who makes a public comment, I don't see that as having to change an entire thing to please one person. It might make sense, it might make the better, but I think that we're just going to keep spinning our wheels if we do that. I think it's very reasonable, given the process we've already undergone, to look at the 6 maps, and if you want to make a tweak to any of those maps, make a tweak. I mean, even on this printout, I can't see, and I know it was emailed, but to be honest, I didn't have time to look at it on email, but you can't see what the deviation is. We don't know if the deviation is
So
legal.
for some reason, the printing didn't print.
What is the deviation?
9.
9%?
Yeah, so the online version should, I'm guessing this was just a printing error, but the actual PDF has it.
Chair Frank, are you willing to take public comment?
Not yet. This isn't an agenda item, and we're just kind of picking each other's brain on this.
Is public comment.
I think we definitely did solicit from the public, like, hey, if anybody has tweaks, this is how we talked about screenshotting your computer and email. We did all of that. And maybe through maybe some fault of us or you should never assume. In my mind, when we were saying that, I was expecting, I took map C and I moved, this neighborhood association from 2 to 3 snapshot email, as opposed to, a new map, a new map. And I get, like, everybody's threshold of what a minor change is, but I was kind of reaching out to the public to say, yeah, if you guys know a specific little tweak that we're talking about that we should have live lined on the 24th, tell me what the little tweak is.
Yeah, well, but then it's the domino effect we talked about. And we asked the public, make sure if you take from this part, you got to then add to this part. And so I would like to have, if people are going to make tweaks, make sure you game it out ahead of time. Don't come on the 24th saying, I want to move a neighborhood association, without then knowing.
But then we're also not asking or telling the public that we're going to send their tweaks to the demographer and ask for all the things that Chair Frank was saying.
But I'm open to
somebody
getting-
mentioned that to do that with this map, which then in my mind still makes it a new map.
these are really, I'm coming on the 24th to recommend adjustments. And so as we're talking and we're doing live line drawing has become what we use to describe the process on the 24th. So this was to be very transparent, and I think it's very good because now, like, if I had come on the 24th with this, people would have been apparently shocked. So I'm glad that, you know, people know this is how I interpreted the live line drawing, looking at maps, getting feedback, and then we come up with what is going to be the best map, whether it's one unchanged or it is a modified map.
And that's again where I would ask for clarification on the use of the word plural maps for the 24th. Because my understanding was, I know we said tweaks, but tweaks to specifically maybe one map in particular that we were all thinking about, not taking all 6 maps and tweaking them all into a brand new map. So that's, and again, I really like this map. It's just the process that I am concerned with.
You can do that, but then the effect is, what does that mean as far as like publication period and public hearings and that kind of thing? And you know,
that's what I'm asking.
And apart from the law, transparency and community input and all those things. If you could spring a brand new map on the public and adopt it on the 24th. If I could tell you that the charter says that, and it does, outside counsel says, it doesn't equate one of the draft maps as the final map, right? So could you do that? Yes, maybe legally you could, but do you want to do that?
No.
I mean, we only have like 8 or 9 days.
What's that?
We only have 8 or 9 days until
Right.
the 24th. What I would love to see is which map does this most resemble, what tweaks you made. I moved this over to north and moved this over to this street.
Yeah.
Submit it to Jed as well, because we all have the demographer's email address. And I'm, hoping he's working on the weekends and everything too. And he can run those numbers pretty quick. And then that way, we really have, I can't eyeball this and say whether I like it or not, because I don't even know if the numbers are, what they do.
But that's why, I don't think we should spring changes on people without any warning on the 24th, which is why I wanted to put them out where my head was so far. So then there are more opportunities for people to comment, even to me, about, I don't like that. Please don't do that with live line drawing. So I'm just trying to be transparent.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Since you worked on the charter, the charter says, and this was part of our Thursday discussion, was that we were supposed to come up with, it's per the language, it says a map, a draft map. And then we were going to have 30 days, and that would be the time for citizens to make comments on the draft map, correct?
Correct.
What was the intent of having public comment if that wasn't going to be changed?
And I think that's the whole purpose behind the public comment, right? Is to take into consideration what the community is telling you and make some changes. What is unclear, so I think it's clear in my mind that you can tweak, you can change maps, you can do another full map altogether. The legal issue for us was, does that make it another draft map and you got to do 30 days in the public hearing? Or could you adopt those tweaks or a brand new map on the 24th? When I read to you state law earlier, it very specifically says a draft map must be published for 7 days and adopted as the final map. Our charter doesn't say that. When you look at it, it says that after having heard comments from the public on the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map, the commission shall adopt a final redistricting report and final map, which doesn't indicate that it has to be one and the same, right? But again, what we're talking about here is, the comfort level of the commission. If you make some little tweaks on the 24th and you feel comfortable then putting it back out for 7 days because it's a tweak of map A, let's say, as opposed to a hybrid of 3 of the maps, your comfort level may be different as far as being able to get public input on that because that's essentially a brand new map.
So after the 24th, we come up with the one map, and we put it out there for 7 days, 30 days. What are we doing that for? So that people can look at it, criticize it, and we're going to vote on it anyway? We're going to vote yes, that's the map? I don't understand why.
Unless there's something compelling that we hear in those 7 days.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why the intent of the charter I am confused by is asking for public comment when we're not really going to do anything.
Right. But it's also to meet any legal challenges.
Right, but you could. Here's the thing. There's nothing that's going to force you to adopt that map 7 days later or 30 days later. You could keep going up until June 10th.
Would it have been better that the charter say that the commission would come up with draft maps?
Yes.
And
in
then-
retrospect,
then
it should
narrow
have been
it down to
paren
one.
S, right? You know, and then when you draft these things in retrospect, until they're in practice, you don't know kind of how they'll play out.
Sure.
And this is why it's good to have the debrief, right? So we can, 8 years from now, when we go back to the voters for charter review, that we clean some of this stuff out now that we've seen it play out in practice.
Because I think as a commission, we took it that we were going to narrow it down to a manageable amount of maps so that we can listen to the public and make the tweaks and come up with a map that, and our purpose as a commission is to take the public comment, do the best we can, and make the decision, not just keep putting it out there and say, well, what do you think? What do you think? That's going to go on forever and ever and ever. If our job as the commission is to be the deciders, ultimate deciders. So we got to get a map out of these 6, do a tweak, put it out for, to me, 7 days, then you kind of meet the elections thing. Because I don't know that 30 days is going to make any difference compared to 7 days if we're not going to really do anything. Does that make sense?
Well, we would listen to public.
Julia, are you able to take the map you drew, choose either A or E, submit your tweaks to Jed, have him run the numbers in time for our Tuesday meeting?
Now, I would have a
Okay.
problem with that, simply because this is our 4th public meeting. This map has not been out there for anybody
No,
else.
But she's gonna pick one of these other maps.
But we're not sending anybody else's, the public, any of their tweaks, which is what we said
Yes, we
to
are.
Jeb.
Yes, we are.
We are?
I've sent for map B, and I've stated it in public also at the meetings. Changing Escaton Village along Pleasant Grove, changing Sierra Vista Neighborhood Association, potentially with or without the high school and the cemetery, and then potentially expanding Caseburg of District 2.
On a whole new map, though?
No, of map B.
To me, this is a whole new map.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Can she-
I'll just voice mine, that while I do love this map, I do have concerns having it go to him and doing all that when we've already had 4 public hearings and for the public to comment, and now the last 2 will get to have seen this and get to comment on it.
I think it would be nice that on the 24th, when we do tweak the map, that we do have a lot of you here, and the people that have been here and shown interest and will call in, so that as we're doing the live adjustments, the tweaks, that you're allowed to comment on it at that time, because that'll be the last time that public comment would be heard on this issue. So
And by the
I think, yeah, if we get it down to that one map, we do the tweaks, you see it, what do you think?
And by the way, the suggestions that Julia made and the suggestions that I made based on map B, all of them came from the public.
Right.
And we're just kind of the vehicle to.
I think it's just again, the concern is that I know the changes, it's that she put them from so many different maps, plural, as she said herself, into
Right.
one new map. To
Because-
me, it's a new
It's
map,
one
and that's,
map.
I've had my say, it's to me a new map.
And Julia, so you can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
easy.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a good thing that if we've got some tweaks that we want to see made, that the public is having through the medium of the comments, and that you guys are getting an idea of what different commissioners are thinking about as possibilities, so that you have some time to react to them before the meeting on the 24th.
And again, the public consistently has the opportunity to send the city clerk any tweaks to a map, not a wholesale change of any map. But again, you guys are the eyes and ears on the ground. You know where a street moves and whether it should be, but we're not talking about wholesale, at least that's what the consensus was at the last meeting, that we were going to change them a little bit, tweak them a little bit. And then we even talked about technical tweaks that the demographer might recommend that we haven't really even discussed. So,
Chair Frank, may I make a comment real quick? We're kind of getting a little bit outside of what this should have been at one of the other agenda items. So because of that, I think it's appropriate to open it up for public comment.
I agree. And I will. Any other commissioners that?
Do you want to put it up on the screen? So I know Joe is.
Could we do that though without any information on any of
public? It's printed out there for anyone who wants to go grab it. So it is part of public comment. Just in case for people who are sitting down wondering what we're talking about, I think it is part of the public comment.
Just like anybody else's
Right.
email might be part of public comment.
Off the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead and then we'll open it up.
Sure. So I kind of, maybe this is a fuzzy line, but how Commissioner Frank, you're talking about basically doing what I had in my mind on the 24th is I like map B, but I have these 3 little tweaks, and they're all very specific, like the ones you just met. That, okay, I've got my head around, the public has their head around that you're talking about B and the small tweaks. But then the map from Julia may have the same thing kind of thing, but it hasn't been articulated to me yet that, oh, this is map E with these 3 little tweaks.
Right.
I think that's what I'm missing, and if that was the case, I'd say, okay, you've now said that to the public, now they can, it's of the magnitude that they can sort of wrap their head around, oh, it's those 3 tweaks on map E, so maybe they can, or whatever map, so the public can then on the 24th say, I support map E with the 3 tweaks that were presented today, or something like that. And
it comes down to the numbers. It's like you might support the tweak of adding this part of Pleasant Grove, but because there's 2,000 people there, you can't make that tweak without a complementary tweak in a
then I think the
different
tweak
district.
doesn't work, and you set it aside.
Well, I don't know.
It doesn't domino,
But
I
it would be
think,
good
but-
because when I participated in that consensus last week and we're talking about the consensus, I thought this was completely valid. I thought we were looking at drafts, taking in feedback. And so I would like to just hear from everyone, are they open to adjustments? I thought that we all were.
We are open to adjustments to current 6 maps.
Right, and I consider this an adjustment based on the 6
You can
maps?
articulate that. Which map, which changes, and
Okay.
then we can have the discussion on Tuesday. We still have time.
Yeah.
It's not like, Sunday and Monday, we're going to be talking about these maps with our families, and, maybe. Okay.
Just looking at Julia's map compared to the draft that we have for A, it is very similar, and it was thoughtful of her to try to include the public comments that came in by email for the people that aren't in the room. She took some of those things and put those in. I can see it. And I would like to have it available to us when we come together on the January 24th with whatever Jed puts together, so we can kind of see the.
With the specific changes?
Yeah.
Okay. Not just the map, but.
With the change, just with the tweaks, excuse me, I'm saying the wrong word.
Okay. Any other commissioners, alternate commissioners? John?
Yeah, my only thought, just a quick glance at it is, on your map, is map A had a 20,000 population 6-year issue, and this map looks like it's adding another 7,000 or 8,000 to that when you take out Pleasant Grove and the other half of Quail Glen and put it in another district. And I think that's going to be it's been a topic at every meeting, and I just thought I'd throw out there, I think that's going to be an issue.
All right. Any other commissioners? There's 2 on the phone, so
I would like to say something.
All right, Andrew, go ahead.
From the public, I would like to hear, rather than saying just a map, how about just a district? And say, well, District 1, we have 6 maps. District 1 seems to be okay in 3 or 4 of them, the way that they are. And then eliminate that, okay, District 1, this is how it's going to look. Then District 2, does that need some tweaking? Then where would you tweak it? District 3, to do it that way, because it seems like offhand, number 1, District 1 is like map A, like map B almost, I think. But then we're not looking at such a big amount of changes, that we're looking at the tweaks if we do it that way. Just more of a systematic way of looking at it, one district at a time. That's my thought.
Open it up to public comment. State your name for the record.
Richard Ricucci. This is what I was talking about when I was up here a little earlier about changing maps, just like the county did at the very end. And also want to make a little confession. Joe's comment last week, the long comment about legality of this, that, what have you, was precipitated by my small email to him. And that one comment still stands, that you boiled down 23 down to 6. You have 6 public hearings or 7, whatever, to get comments on those. My last statement, or one of my last statements, my letter was, what constitutes a small change, or a minor change, or a tweak on a map? And it doesn't make it a new map, because the public has given you 6 maps to choose from. You chose them, I didn't, to move forward with the 30-day review period. And so I think the question still stands for the attorney's office to answer for you guys, not tonight. I'm not here for one map or the other, although you already know that I like map B. But to answer that question, because I think that's where you're all bogged down in, how much change can we make on a map, or is it even legal to combine 2 maps or 3? And how many changes can we make before we have a new map and a new 30 days or whatever? We chose 6 maps, and those 6 maps weren't somebody's dream. They were somebody from the public. And I tried one time, not this time, but the original one. I couldn't get the numbers to work out. I guess I'm not computer savvy enough. But I think that question still stands. How much of a change can you make on one of the maps that it could be acceptable as not a new map, and go from one map to the other, and not combine and make a new map on the 24th or whenever, just like happened at the county? Because that would be a disservice. It'd be a lack of transparency, etc. Thank you.
State your name for the record, please.
Jay Reed again, thank you. I'm not really here to talk about the maps. Your process is what's at stake here. And you guys have set forth a process. It's all been very public. You've already done your map making. That's already done. Okay, this is the 6 maps that this commission has moved forward to do. I have been very reticent about this real-time reline drawing, because it is very subjective on what is a new map and what is, a change to an existing map. The public is watching, the media is watching, and the last thing that anyone needs, this commission especially, is to throw, gasoline on a very controversial, shouldn't be, fire. And if you're going to throw a new map in the 4th quarter and say it's minor or it's just tweaking, I think that this commission really needs to be cognizant of that and be wary of that. That's not what this process was about. Your job is not to find compromise, okay? Your job is to put forward 6 maps, have the public comment on them, and then, decide what they want to do, what you guys want to do with one map. So if you want to continue the process another 30 days, then that's a different story. Because I think that's what would have to be required if you're going to start introducing new maps. It's in the interest of public transparency, and maybe these maps weren't the right ones that this commission put forward. We're going to consider some new maps. Then that's a different conversation. So I think that the process that you guys have adhered to, that is written, that's out there, is the one that this commission needs to stick to.
Anyone else from the audience?
Hello, Ellen DeBach Riley. Speaking on this very thing, I think the intent of public comment is to hear the people. And so if you're going to consider making changes to map B, then you have to consider making changes to all of the maps, or have a consistency with not making changes to any of them. But if you do that, then you're disregarding all the public comment that's come to you. Thank you.
Catherine Kitchell, Diamond Oaks neighborhood. Unfortunately, the maps that you chose have some pretty significant differences among them. It's going to be very difficult to get enough people to support 1 or 2 or 3 or A, B, C, whatever, without some sort of compromise, because they're just too different. If you look at map B and you look at map F, there's a significant change that happens between those two maps. And it's not to say that one is right and the other is wrong. They both have points in favor of them, but I would contend that you can compromise between all these maps. What was the point of bringing 6 maps forward if you weren't going to get public feedback and consider what the public had to say? And I understand that the process is in place, and you need to consider that. But I also think you need to consider that this is something that is going to affect this city for the next 10 years. And if you have entire sections of the city that feel as though they have no voice, I don't think the process is any good. I think you need to consider all of the public's input and come up with the best map that you can. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Marcus LaDuca. I can't comment on what you've been discussing for the past
The
20...
folks in the audience would mind not speaking when someone up at the podium is speaking?
Because I haven't seen the map, so I can't tell whether the tweaks are major or minor in terms of how you define that. But I have a couple questions. One, if you were to consider in this, let's say, as Commissioner Boriak said, again, this is a new map. Sort of what was the point of shortlisting to 6? And then 2, you have, I think, a couple more hearings on the 18th and 20th. What happens if a member of the public submits a map for one of those? Because, again, it's not noticed. You would have no choice but to also be considering that. Otherwise, you are into arbitrary and capricious, and I get to put my lawyer hat back on. So that is of a concern. But again, when analogizing it to the land use process that I have spent a career in, when we process specific plan, Roseville's, I've been involved in lots of them here, and you go through a whole series of hearings and workshops over quite a bit of time. And they're all open to the public. And at the very end, you say, I want to substantially change that map. You don't then go say, a few days later, a week later, and say, let's go adopt it. You don't get to do that. We would be disemboweled as an applicant if we did that. We would have to go back to the process, as your counsel has said. If you're going to do that, and you're going to open up this process, not with tweaks, in terms of moving a line here and trying to pick up one of the 6 maps, but an entirely new map, I think you disserve the public if you then don't go back and say, instead of 6 maps we wanted you to consider, we want you to consider 7, or if another one comes in, 8, and then start this process again. Otherwise, these past 4 public hearings you've had have been deemed irrelevant because there's been no public review of this at all. And I don't care who it got emailed to. Again, that wasn't what you chose to do. You chose to send out 6 maps, get comment on 6 maps. And so again, analogizing to the land use process, we don't get to just willy-nilly come in with brand new documents and say, a week later, go adopt it. Because that's not how it works. And this isn't the red face test. That gets us into the legal ability to be able to act on something that is a major change at that point. Again, I don't know whether this map might be minor changes. I have no idea. But that's the point. No one in the public does. And that is, I think, as has been mentioned, you have a seventh map in front of you. That, for all practical purposes, you have a seventh map. So what do you do now, given that you've had 4 of these hearings? This is a Saturday, so you cannot notice that map for Tuesday. You cannot legally do so. You violate the Brown Act. And since Monday's a holiday and you can't act, you can't do it for next Thursday. So now you're going to go to the 24th with a 7th map that has been not legally noticed before that date. At some point, the integrity of the process, you have to look at that also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I comment real quick? Yes. I think, I wish I thought of the same word, because I live in the mapping engineering world too. But substantial conformance. I think if we have tweaks to these maps, someone needs to be, you should be able to look at that map and say it's in substantial conformance to one of the 6 maps that was submitted. Yes, this one neighborhood moved from here to here, but it's in substantial conformance. I think we're going to get into, it's going to get, it could get ugly if we can't, with a straight face, say this quote-unquote new map that we've tweaked is not in substantial conformance with one of the 6 that we've been traveling around with all the districts.
I would agree with Ryan.
Chair Frank, we do have callers.
Okay, anybody else in the audience? The record, please.
Kevin LaChance. I was just going to mention briefly, I suppose there's still a mention of what the mandate is and what the regulation and requirement is. We have a map, I believe, June 15th is when we have to have it done by?
June 10th.
10th, I believe.
10th, June 10th. So that's our hard deadline. So if this commission decided okay, we all liked these 6 maps, but all of them require some tweaks and it's ambiguous what is a minor and what is a major, you could choose, this is an unpopular one since it puts more work on all of you, to go another 30 days, tweak all of the maps ahead of time, be like, okay, these are now the adjusted maps. We now have 6 maps. Let's have our meetings. Everyone only gets to pick between these, no further adjustments. Everyone pick which is your favorite and give us comment, and then we decide between them, just as a thought.
Thank you. All right, we have some callers on the phone, please.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Lisa Larkin.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Yes, I want to comment in favor of making tweaks to maps. Otherwise, hearing from the public makes no sense. These were 6 maps that were presented to the public. Yes, they're not perfect. You have half in favor of one map, half in favor of another map. I've heard a couple of the commissioners say they really like this map. If it is the best map, why would you not want to move forward with that, even if it took you an extra 30 days? Why would you not want to do that? Because if you pick these maps as they are, and you disregard the public comment and try to make the best map, then you're ignoring the public. And I saw one down in Placer County, right? They had a map that they had several maps, but they presented one map to the Board of Supervisors. The public was completely against that map, completely against it. They allowed for people to make tweaks to the map, to make a better map, a map that they got consensus on from everyone, no matter what political party they belonged to, where they lived, the fact that it redistricted out one of the supervisors. It made no difference because it was a better map for Placer County. It was one that the public supported. And if you can come up with that by making tweaks to one of these maps, and the wording about, I looked at all 6 maps and it kind of encompasses all of them, that's ridiculous. You can start with any one of those maps and make tweaks. And if it looks like map A and you've made tweaks to it, then fine. At the last meeting, you all said you were open to tweaks, right? You all said it. And so why not allow those tweaks? If it's a better map for the next 10 years, why would you want to not allow a better map that meets all of the public's input about their neighborhoods of interest and communities? So I would hope that you would move forward and allow those. You don't necessarily have to show it in the next meeting, but on the 24th, if you're doing a line drawing, what's the difference of doing a line drawing and making a tweak to map B, which I've heard, and I've seen public comment submitted that there are 4 different changes to that map. Why wouldn't you allow the other maps to be tweaked as well? And you can do that live. You don't have to present this map right now as it is. You can check and see, does it work? Does it meet all the numbers? Does it meet the Voter Act requirements? And then have the line drawing to do it live on the 24th. And then have the public that's there, whatever. We're leaving this up to you. You guys are the independent commission. You are members of the public, and we expect you to do what's best and what the public wants. And so I would love to see you do that line drawing as an option to meet those maps that have been drawn up ahead of time to make sure that they actually meet the requirements before you draw them out live on the 24th. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Lisa, before you go, can I ask you a quick question? My question was, would she be opposed to that being done in time for our Tuesday meeting? Which is what I've asked Juliet to try and do.
Mr. Leduca is correct. We do not have the option at this point.
Not line draw, I'm sorry, no, but to be able to submit those tweaks to the demographer, pick any one of the 6 maps.
As commissioners, we are empowered to contact the demographer with any of our questions.
And we just got the demographer's out of office message till Tuesday.
Well, luckily, I have it in the system. The submit button just doesn't, it says no longer accepting. So you just
So we don't have to wait until 24th to get some more information about.
Is it no longer submitting because then it would be a new map?
Yeah, so kind of like how the process is supposed to work is that you do all this prior, the map drawing period is when you adopted your 6 maps, right? You're supposed to have done all this during that, communities of interest and that kind of thing. And then you hear the public, and that's why state law, you said it's a publication period. The draft map is the final map. It's a 7-day period. So we kind of like maybe did things a little bit backwards. Maybe we could have done all this before. But in any event, we have this 30 days getting the public comment period. And so I think it's appropriate that if you want to make some tweaks, and we're just going to have to keep in mind whether or not those tweaks are and I don't have a legal definition to the person who's asking about what is minor and what is major, right? Well, I don't have that. I don't have a definition that says if it impacts 5,000 people, it's minor, and if 50,000 people, it's major. But that's something we're going to have to decide as a commission, right? And your comfort level too. Like, are you going to adopt a map on the 24th that is wholesale, maybe completely different than the 6 maps?
I think the line drawing on the 24th is one thing, but as she just stated, she did this trying to submit it, and the submit button doesn't work. That's a new map. And again, I'm not opposed to that, but I think for transparency, it becomes a new map.
So the whole goal here is to make the best map possible. I don't think we necessarily have to pick this map. I think we still need to listen in the next meetings and continue to make adjustments. But at the end of the day, the goal is to have a map that best serves all of Roseville as much as possible.
As long as we're following the process.
I do want to draw a distinction between the draft maps and the final map, and that is what is allowing us to even have the leeway of the 7 days. There is not a requirement that draft map equals final map. And so our final map is just anything we deem as the final map.
Not necessarily anything.
Well,
if someone just submits a map, we've had a process. And that's why I'm going to go back to what I asked before. Can we get this information before January 24th so we are completely transparent? Pick any one of these maps, say this is map A, I'm tweaking it, this is map E, I'm tweaking it, these are the tweaks, and then we can look at it. And then in the meantime, ask the demographer for what would those tweaks do? Would those tweaks make it where it's not legal anymore? Or if it has only 2 neighborhood associations that are intact? If we have 40,000 people who are now 6-year gap? I think we can't just have a map and say, I like it, but I'm going to vote on it. We need that information. We need those numbers. And so you've nodded your head saying you can do that. So I'd like to now move on to the caller who's next in line.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Kathleen Crawford.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear the conversation, but again, I think you're getting so far into the weeds of distinctions between what is a minor tweak, what's a major tweak, what's a conformance, what's not. I think that the whole concept here is to try to develop as much information during the public hearing process, and that information comes with each one of the public hearings. So today there was a public hearing, you got more information, and you're going to ask for more background from the demographer so that you have data coming in that you have time to think about before the 24th. But then on the 24th, you go to the online drawing, and at that point in time, you bring forward all the information and look to see what could work. And what could work would be what the majority of the commission wants or sees as being in the best interest of the community. So my idea would be to quit endlessly talking around these points and to just allow more information to keep coming to you, requesting information if you need it, and then wait till the 24th to take any action on adjusting or tweaking a map. Thank you.
And again, I want to repeat to the audience and everybody in the public, if you have a tweak that you'd like to see made to any map, you can submit that to the city clerk and maybe just at the first sentence say, please send this to the demographer, and then we'll all have that available to us. But anybody can do that at any time, including members of the commission. How many more callers do we have? And by the way, if we're still going by 5 o'clock, I'd like to recess for a while and then come back, but hopefully we won't. One more caller.
Thank you for calling the public comment line. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Susan Gitowski.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks so much for taking my call. I'm calling because I just want to make 2 quick points. I've watched both this Commission's hearing and also the Placer County Board of Supervisors as they went through the redistricting process. And my 2 points are, number 1, I believe a tweak is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%, either geography or people. And secondly, I support Map E because I feel that keeping the Arcona neighborhood associations together is a high priority. And Map E definitely keeps every current neighborhood association together. It's clean, it's simple, it meets all of the criteria. And again, I think tweaking it slightly would hurt, but I think it's good as is. And the idea that there is one right answer, there isn't. But I think the consensus of public comment and both of your for both of these points, and also in your best judgment, what best serves the community. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Any other callers? 0 more callers. I would like to hear a motion to adjourn to the next meeting.
So moved.
Which is January.
I'm going to, Paul, if I can jump in, this is Joe Mandel again. If I can I wanted to just, since everybody's talking about getting tweaks into JED and comments into our demographer, I have a meeting on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. You recall that we have a meeting on Tuesday at 6 p.m. So I have a meeting on Tuesday at 10 with him, no matter what happens with all of the comments coming in. And I'm hoping that he will have a running list, or will be able to, give me some information that I can bring to the group on Tuesday and Thursday of next week as to, what sort of comments or common themes we're seeing. Maybe there's a lot of potential tweaks to move a street from here to there, and I'd like to be able to provide that information to the group. And so I just wanted to get that out there, that on Tuesday morning I will be meeting with Flow and redistricting partners, and then should have a little bit more information for you on Tuesday night as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question, Joe, if you don't mind. So I know I had submitted some tweaks a week ago, and then a second time. Did we get those in our packets like we did with Julia's?
I don't know if those are in the packet itself or if they're in the public testimony portion online. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone wants to stay, say no. All right, we'll see you all on Tuesday. Have a great long weekend. And thank you everybody for staying so long. I appreciate it. We all